personal. On a larger scale, we do have the industrial revitalization tax, which is based on a sliding scale to attract the bigger companies like the Molsons and what's on our doorstep. We have the lowest taxes. We have the fastest turnaround time at City Hall compared to other communities. We as a City Hall, we try to make things as quick and efficient as possible for folks who want to come in to Chilliwack. I was talking to a realtor here a couple of days ago, and before we endeavored to go down the 1881 path, the downtown wasn't really a place to invest. Now there's no place to invest downtown because it's become so popular. So again, back to the same thing I said before, why wouldn't you want to invest in Chilliwack?
One of the challenges that Chilliwack has faced over the decades is we have a very large footprint geographically, but we have a very compact urban containment zone. This was solidified in the 1970s with the introduction of the Agricultural Land Reserve, and has limited Chilliwack's ability to grow, not only for residential, but in most particular, our industrial land base. We've faced those challenges now for 50 years. I am in favor of the urban containment zone, but as we grow and move forward, we're going to have to look at attracting businesses that are going to provide employment by the hectare. And this is going to be largely focused on STEM business opportunities. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So the importance of having a solid education in our school system is going to be vital to how we proceed in the future.
I'd like to make sure we're building lots of businesses in our community. I come from the technology sector. I'd like to make sure we're building that, whether it be through organic growth of new businesses or building them out of the university. We have a great university locally here. We can be starting new businesses out of there and creating wealth for the community that way. That's definitely a passion of mine. I also want to make sure we're attracting and retaining businesses. So retaining the businesses that are here. I think tourism is doing a great job of marketing Chilliwack as a great place to live. We've got local down my part of town, Banter Ice Cream recently moved from Abbotsford to Chilliwack. Who else can we bring to town here to bring their new ideas and expand their businesses in Chilliwack, what we have here to offer?
Well, first of all, let me preface my answer by going back a few years. A few years ago with the past mayor, I was part of a committee that the city formed to meet and engage and invite large-scale business, small-scale businesses and industry into our city. What was interesting for me in that meeting is that the executives and the presidents and the investors that did come to our city, what they were most interested in were just a few things that they wanted more detail, and they almost wanted a show and tell. They wanted to know about taxes. But not just taxes. They wanted to know about public safety. Would their people, would their families all be safe in our community? What was interesting and what the corporations and the businesses wanted when they viewed Chilliwack as a potential candidate to set up in, they wanted to know about public safety. They wanted to know about our hospitals. They wanted to know about our parks and recreation. They wanted to know about affordable housing. They wanted to know about our taxes. And that for me really gives me a template and a blueprint as to what to pay attention to as we look to attract not only families but businesses into the city of Chilliwack. These are the areas we have to keep an eye on.
That's a great question. While it might not seem like the most savvy response, I believe that one of the ways that we can grow a strong economy is to ensure that nobody gets left behind with our rental housing. There's a huge gap in inventory right now of stable, affordable, and plentiful rental properties available. This is creating a lot of challenges for more vulnerable members in our community who are marginalized by lower incomes, fixed incomes, our seniors, and our students. We have to ensure that that workforce is able to stay in Chilliwack and that we don't lose our youth to more affordable places to live. I also think that it's really important that our infrastructure keeps up with our growth and that we have a reliable transportation network. And lastly, I think it's very important that our business citizens and our business advocacy groups have clear lines of communication to the city so that we can keep up with that growth.
You know, we're really fortunate to live in a community that lives within its means. We have a downtown revitalization and industrial revitalization tax exemption in order to attract businesses into our community. Since I've been on council, we've been very fortunate that we've attracted some pretty big players within our communities. Ritchie Brothers, Langley Concrete, Prairie Coast Equipment, Pacific Dairy, Molson Coors. And when we think of Molson Coors, I'll use that as an example, that's $1 million of tax revenue to the city that we don't have to drum up from a residential taxation point. So we have to work hard to ensure that this community maintains that overall status of being a place where we welcome business and we want business in our community.
Well, I think the most effective way we can do that is by keeping our property taxes low. Property taxes are an expense for every business, and keeping property taxes low gives our local businesses a competitive advantage over other businesses in other cities. Another way we can do that is by encouraging the downtown revitalization program, the industrial revitalization program, where businesses come to your town and invest in them and then get some sort of tax breaks over the next 5 years. And I think the final thing we can do is keep permit times fast so that when you're expecting a building permit for things, you have a turnaround time of about 5 weeks or less.
Chilliwack does a fantastic job processing all of the applications for redevelopment and variances and rezoning because it's growing by leaps and bounds. And I know from firsthand experience that Chilliwack has a reputation in the whole valley of being efficient, a good place to do business, and processing things very efficiently. But I would make sure that that would continue and improve. In fact, a project I'm working on right now, which is redeveloping the United Church downtown into affordable housing, is taking longer than we thought. And I really wonder what are the delays. So I share concerns of other developers about what are those delays. I'd love to see that be even more efficient, even more streamlined, and even better communicated.
So as a local government, we can't directly subsidize business, but we can help out in other ways. There are some great partner organizations in Chilliwack. There's SEPCO, there's BIA, there's the Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Chilliwack that can provide resources, information, and guidance to any size or type of business. Countless times I've spoken with business owners that struggle through issues that could have been easily solved with a simple phone call to one of these partner organizations. I can't stress enough how important it is for business to utilize these great agencies. As far as the city directly, business cannot be tied up in red tape and delays, so City Hall staff must provide top-notch service and quick turnaround times. Chilliwack has always been known as business friendly, and we need to constantly work at it so that never changes. Finally, we need to keep up with infrastructure, such as roadways, parking, sidewalks, and bike paths that are fully accessible by all. Our streets should be clean and safe for all to use, and transit needs to continually evolve and expand as neighborhoods grow.
Without having first knowledge of what the city plan is now, if I'm elected, we need to go through this plan thoroughly, because investing in Chilliwack is a big ordeal for a lot of people, uprooting their current businesses. For instance, Molson's left Vancouver, came to Chilliwack, they found it attractive. Our industrial section is growing immensely along the side of the freeway. We have new businesses coming in all the time. Our streets, where these businesses are going, have to feel safe for these new owners. Our emergency plans, our policing, our fire department, all that is part of the big picture. So if we can continue and even do better on the path we're on now, I think it's always going to be a great place to invest your business here in Chilliwack.
Well, you know what, I think it comes down to thoughtful and responsible development, ensuring that our developers are developing properly and having a long-range plan that fits in the goals of our community, in the sense that where do we want to be in 10 years, making sure that our zoning isn't cemented in, and that we're actually looking at it as a living document so that we can change zoning to fit with our plans. And honestly, most importantly, we need to talk to businesses. We need to know what's worked, what hasn't worked, what can we do better, what is your neighborhood like, what would you like to see in your neighborhood, what would help you thrive. And if we do all of those things, I think we're going to end up in a good place.
So one of the main points on my campaign is that I want to make Chilliwack and continue to make Chilliwack a great place to work and live and to do business. So my husband Brad and I, we have been involved in the business community and had many local businesses, and we know how important it is to rely on the locals to support our business. For the last few years, as GM of Community Futures South Fraser, I've had the opportunity to work with lots of local businesses and to work in partnership with the Chilliwack Economic Partners Corporation, the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Chilliwack BIA, as well as Tourism Chilliwack. And with these partnerships, we have been able to inject millions of dollars into our local business community. It helps to build the long-term sustainability of Chilliwack. This strategic business focus is what I plan to bring to City Council to help create a vibrant and healthy community.
I pride myself on being a big supporter of our Economic Development Office, the Chilliwack Economic Partners Corporation. I'm a past director with SEPCO when I was the president of the Chamber of Commerce. What's really important is to set the table for making a community business friendly. That means thinking about the things employers are looking at when they're trying to attract employees. It means building the kind of infrastructure in the communities that people want to live in. It means going out and actually meeting with potential investors and people who are wanting to relocate to Chilliwack. But it also means looking at homegrown opportunities. How do you support entrepreneurs? How do you support small local businesses here in Chilliwack? And how do you make the community into a place where people want to invest, but also start businesses? It means that at the City of Chilliwack, we need to move permits and business applications through as quick as possible, remove red tape when we can. And it also means just getting out there as a city councillor and setting an example. I'm a small business owner and an entrepreneur. I have been for 14 years. And so I know what it's like to struggle day in and day out when you're starting, owning, and operating a business.
Well, the big thing that the provincial government has done is created what's called a step code. And we're around step 2, leaning into step 3. And really that's about safety and being energy conscious, to build your buildings, to build your houses in that fashion. We at the Hall have created an affordable housing committee that's been ongoing for the past few years, and that consists of obviously city staff, but builders and developers to try to get ahead of the curve so they know what's coming. We also have a city staffer that sits in the provincial committee as an advisor. Sure, the province can put these big ideas out there and try to work with them, but the guys on ground zero are the ones that are actually working with these codes. So it's interesting to see the tie-in with that. People talk about, well, what can we do? Well, a good example is a heat pump, of course, opposed to your conventional furnace type of actual heating system. And there's all kinds of grants that are attached to that as well. So for me, it's just staying ahead of the game.
It's a great question. I'm living that experience right now. I'm currently in the process of designing a net positive passive house, and it's going to exceed the requirements of a step 5 residential structure in line with the 9-step process that the BC government established in 2015. When we talk about the implications with the building code in this 9-step process, the BC Liberal government was very specific in its requirement to exclude the BC building code from these requirements, knowing full well that in 2015, by the completion date of 2032, there were going to be numerous advances in the technologies and how we get to net zero construction. And I haven't had any difficulties with that in my process. I've had numerous options to review, and I've chosen an option. It's all Canadian. It's manufactured in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and it's very cost competitive. In fact, I will be able to have my structure at the lockup stage in 3 days, rather than the 2 months that it would take to stick frame this particular structure. So I don't really see it as a challenge or a difficulty. It's just a new way of thinking about how we build going forward.
I think the building code's there to make sure we have quality buildings constructed in our province for energy efficiency and for safety. So I think there's a lot of good things there, but where possible, I'd like to see the city making sure that we're getting out of the way of good developments in the city. I think in particular, one area that I'm concerned about is purpose-built rentals. So I'd like to make sure that we can do things to possibly improve the economics of purpose-built rentals so we can get more rental stock in our city. I know that's a problem. I know I've received feedback from the community already as part of my run for council with feedback on that. And so I'd like to make sure we're doing what we can to make the economics better, to attract those businesses and help them compete. It's a big market. People are building condos, they're building purpose-built rentals, making sure we can get good buildings built in Chilliwack.
There's a survey that's done annually in the Lower Mainland, and what it does is compares all the building permit times across the space we live in the Lower Mainland. And consistently, year after year, Chilliwack always places in the top 3. So we are very expedient and we are quick with the building permit process. But that doesn't mean we should take our eye off the ball, because things are changing and there's change on the horizon. As we move to more energy efficient houses and buildings in the province, and I expect the government this year will come up with an announcement exactly that. The residential houses will now move to what's called step 3. And I envision in the coming years it'll go to step 4. And what that will mean for building permits is it changes the scope of the inspection. It goes from something that's more prescriptive, where they're measuring walls and looking at footings. They're still important, but what they'll be doing is measuring the performance of the energy in the house. And that's going to take a lot more time. So what we have to do as a city is to watch this develop, be prepared for it, not be surprised by it, and make sure we have the properly trained and experienced building inspectors working for the city that can carry on these inspections. And let's stay in the top 2 or 3 in the Lower Mainland for these times. It's very attractive to business. In my own personal experience, I've talked to businesses and developers that have come to Chilliwack, and when I ask them what made Chilliwack attractive, one of the things they say is the speed at which the city processes building permits. So I think we're in a good space, but let's not take it for granted and keep watching.
Well, while I have a lot to learn in this area, and I'm certainly open to input from the business community, one thing that I know as a successful business owner is that in order to keep up with demand, you have to have well-trained and adequate staff. So I think it's really important that we're well-equipped at City Hall to keep up with the demand of applications to ensure efficient turnaround. I also think it's really important that we access our provincial leaders that live right here in our municipality to ensure that our voices are leveled up and raised up to a provincial level. They need to hear our concerns, and those are the appropriate people to carry those concerns forward.
Yeah, so the last updated plan was 2018, and it looks like later this year that the province is going to require local governments to adopt the step code, or step 3 of the step code, which in essence means that the building envelopes need to be 20% more efficient for residential construction, as well as heating would be primarily through a heat pump. So there's work to be done, but we will, as we always do, we will pivot as needed. The key is to get permitting and out as soon as possible, so housing starts can get out of the ground as soon as possible, and we've done a really good job at that. In the Lower Mainland, we have the quickest turnaround time for building permits, and people recognize that.
So the BC Building Code right now is a prescriptive method of building, where it says like you got to do this in order to achieve these goals, but it's moving to a performance-based system, and a performance-based system is a lot harder for building inspectors to do their reviews and their inspections. And so I think what we need to do is we need to hire more staff so that we keep our turnaround times about 5 weeks or less. In 2020, we had the perfect storm where we had some other cities headhunt some of our staff, and we had some staff go down with COVID. Suddenly we were, our 5 weeks was down to about 3 months for permit time. So we got all our local builders together in a room and we said to them, look, this is what we can do. We can either keep the status quo, or we can increase the fees and hire 3 more staff and get our permit times down. Overwhelmingly, our local builders said, hire the extra staff, increase our fees, but they know that time is money and we need to get these permit times down faster. After a year of hiring 3 more staff, our permit times went down from 3 months to 5 weeks. So hiring staff is pretty much the only way we're going to do that to keep our permit times the fastest in the Lower Mainland.
Chilliwack does a fantastic job processing all of the applications for redevelopment and variances and rezoning because it's growing by leaps and bounds. And I know from firsthand experience that Chilliwack has a reputation in the whole valley of being efficient, a good place to do business, and processing things very efficiently. But I would make sure that that would continue and improve. In fact, a project I'm working on right now, which is redeveloping the United Church downtown into affordable housing, is taking longer than we thought. And I really wonder what are the delays. So I share concerns of other developers about what are those delays. I'd love to see that be even more efficient, even more streamlined, and even better communicated.
So as the BC Building Code is a provincial regulation, we unfortunately have no other option but to follow it regardless of whether we think it's over the top or not. I believe that we do need minimum standards in the construction industry, but whether the code goes too far, I can't say as I'm not a builder. What we can do at City Hall is to keep turnaround time on permits as short as possible by retaining staff that have a good working knowledge of the code and can ensure that applications are completed correctly the first time around to avoid delays. No different than any other institution, customer service must be number one with the city.
The building code is very complex, but here in Chilliwack, they are the authority having jurisdiction. City Hall has the final call, and they have a program in place for our commercial buildings and industrial. The projects themselves have to be managed by the developer with a consultants group, i.e. engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical, and architects. They are the group that signs off on all these buildings at the end. The city takes care of the fire and safety, and we move along. But we have to make sure our infrastructure as a city is good underneath these buildings and around them. Well, the developers are telling me firsthand that they spend thousands of dollars on fees from architects and engineers, which ultimately take the responsibility for this. So if we can come up with a better plan in City Hall or adjust the one we have now, the commercial side should be able to speed up and be a lot more efficient. But given the 2 years of COVID and other delays with staffing, I'm sure within the next year, this will be brought back under control no matter who's running City Hall.
Well, I mean, it's important to know your role as a city councillor. Of course, the city of Chilliwack doesn't write the BC Building Code. That's the province of British Columbia. But what we do have the opportunity to do is to advocate on behalf of our builders, on behalf of developers, on behalf of our citizens when the code becomes too onerous. And I understand the reasons behind some of the changes in the BC Building Code. We want to build homes that are more sustainable. We want to build homes that are more environmentally friendly. But the trade-off is that we want to make sure that building those homes doesn't exacerbate the affordable housing crunch that we already have in our city. It also creates some unintended consequences when we're trying as a city to hire registered professionals and qualified professionals like building inspectors. And if building inspectors aren't qualified up to the most recent changes in the code, then we're creating unnecessary delays across the board. So it's looking at the unintended consequences, looking at the fact that the BC Building Code is kind of a broad one-size-fits-all solution, and it's looking at how do we get to the place where we want to be, which is to build sustainable, environmentally friendly homes, but look at what the consequences are when we're moving either too quickly by adopting step codes or too slow where we're not adopting, good building practices that are going to keep people safe and environmentally friendly in their houses.
In addition to the multiple changes to the BC Building Code, housing affordability has also been impacted by the increase in lumber prices, the workforce shortages for skilled workers, as well as the ever-changing building technologies. As City Councillor, I continue to support the goals of the City of Chilliwack, which is to help address some of these residential building challenges. We can work together to promote provincial grants for homeowners as well as subsidized training programs for skilled workers. And with these programs and with these training programs, our partnerships with the federal and provincial government are imperative. I recently announced with the federal government, Community Futures will be offering training programs for upskilling workers and owners. These opportunities will support quality jobs, which increases the opportunity to provide better building construction and bring more affordable housing opportunities to Chilliwack.
Well, I'm not going to pretend that I know the newest BC building code. I did have experience as a business owner on Mill Street once when I was trying to change services and trying to do some renos in my brick and mortar. It was difficult, and there's a lot of ways that we can tackle it. We can ask businesses and developers, where's the bottleneck? Is it on our side or is it just the code? And if it's the code, is there education needed? Do we need to educate developers and business owners on the easiest way to jump through those hoops, as it were? Or is it a bottleneck on our side as far as online permitting applications and our staffing? So asking businesses and developers where the bottlenecks are and addressing them directly, if it's on our side, is probably the best way to start.
I like our system. I like the strategy that was introduced prior to me being in my chair right now. I think it's the best way to do it. We do follow what's called the CMP, the Comprehensive Municipal Plan. That's a 10-year plan that has, it's actually filled from the council table, as far as you want sports fields and, more aquatic places, like a new curling rink, these sort of things. And we will create this plan, we will save our money, and we will pay for them. That way we keep our taxes low, the lowest in the Fraser Valley. A good example is we have more artificial turf fields than GVRD. And the reason behind that is it's, soccer for families and kids is a fairly inexpensive sport to get them off their computers and get them out in the fresh air and to work with other kids and just grow with the community. So yes, I do love the strategy and I'm going to stick with the strategy.
I think Chilliwack has been very fortunate over the years. We've had fiscally responsible governments, and one of the constraints that Chilliwack has faced is related to my question and answer one. We have a very limited industrial land base, and therefore we have a very limited industrial tax base that isn't enjoyed in Chilliwack as it is in other communities around the region. But what we have to do, more than just worry about the revenue side of things, we have to worry about the expenditure side. And one of the areas that I think that we can do better is looking at how we distribute, vital and limited public resources to achieve community needs. So my view, we've got the money. It's how we're spending it. It's not so much a matter of the revenue coming in as the priorities of how we're going to achieve the needs of the community in our spending. And I think we can do better with that.
I'd say I largely approve of the budget process and how they're planning and avoiding debt in the city. I would like us to consider putting some large capital spending to the ballot. I think it's too late for that for this election, obviously, but possibly in the next round, what things can we bring forward instead of building them in 5 years from now, or and then I guess it'd be 9 years from now, or well out in the future. What can we put on the ballot in 4 years when we go to the ballot boxes of bringing these capital measures forward to build things possibly with debt and putting that to the citizens of Chilliwack. If you want to see these things built quicker, we can take on debt and we can do so, but it comes at a cost. And I think largely Chilliwack has avoided those extra costs, which I think is a good thing. That's a good financial practice, but there may be things we want to bring forward.
Pay-as-you-go has been a long-standing policy in the city of Chilliwack. It serves us well. Anywhere I go in my travels over the last 4 years where I get to interact and speak with mayors and councillors from other cities in the province, Chilliwack's in a position of envy that we have no debt. And why is that important? Well, having debt, which in my view is not a good thing, creates what's called a debt reduction surcharge or payment on your annual taxes. So your annual taxes as a residential homeowner go up. And why is residential taxes important? Well, it's really the building block for taxes for businesses and industries. Businesses and industries have what's called a multiplier. They pay a multiplier, which is times the residential tax rate. So if our tax rate remains low without debt reduction payments, our multiplier, which in Chilliwack is somewhere between 2 and 2.5, it is the lowest in the Lower Mainland, that continues to make us competitive when we attract and look to buy not only residents, but also homeowners and business and commerce and industry into our city. In Chilliwack, we have what's called a 10-year comprehensive municipal plan. And in that plan, and it's reviewed annually, it's an arm wrestle as we cajole and fight and push and defend our positions of what kind of projects are in the 10-year plan and how are they spaced out during the plan. And this is just one important part of the discussion. So what we do when a plan is in, say, the top three upcoming years, the city starts saving for it. So when the time comes for shovels to be in the ground, for the infrastructure in the building to start, we actually have the money in the bank to pay for the project. We don't go into debt. But what's equally as important is when you have the money in the debt and you're starting on a capital project, there's often opportunities with the provincial and federal governments for grants. Most of these grants come in you pay half, we pay half, or something similar. So by having the money in the bank, from the city's perspective, it's a much more attractive application to the province and the federal government for them to match the funds. Being in debt is not a good thing in a municipality. It raises taxes, and that has a cascading effect over everything we do and everything you do as a citizen.
So as a successful small business owner, I believe in measured and prudent spending. This is part of sustainable and responsible growth. I also feel that it's important to weigh rising land costs and construction costs and to consult with experts to make sure that we are moving forward in the best way. While I am definitely an entrepreneur at heart, I am fiscally conservative and responsible in my own business and will carry that forward into City Hall.
Well, you know, we're very fortunate that we are the envy of so many communities across this province. We save before we build the project. We live within our means. It's important to live within our means, considering the world we're in, the inflationary costs that are steadily increasing. We identify a project and we will save for it. Or if there's federal or provincial grant programs that come on, then we'll have that money saved so that we can stretch our funds. So it works exceptionally well, and my mindset is if it isn't broken, why fix it?
So the pay-as-you-go philosophy has worked really well for our city. As a council, we get together and we plan things 10 years in advance through our municipal comprehensive plan, and we allocate certain money into that plan every year so that when there's big ticket items that we need to spend on, we've got that money there. Often the federal government or the provincial government will come down with infrastructure programs, and if our idea fits their criteria, then we can stretch our dollar 2 times and sometimes even 3 times as far. So that's really getting the most bang for your buck. So the negative part of borrowing is, where do you draw the line? And with increasing interest rates, it's better for us to spend tax dollars on buying buildings, land, and services than it is to pay down debt and interest payments.
I think we can all agree that we shouldn't spend money that we don't have. That's just conservative fiscal position. And as a mom, that's how I raised my family. Nevertheless, businesses can't start with just a cash up front. Who's got that kind of money? Buying a house, you don't start with cash up front. You can't save $1.7 million to buy your first home. That's why we have mortgages, and that's why we have investment, and that's why we borrow. And cities are well positioned to borrow at a very low rate, repay rapidly, and they're going to increase the value of their assets and the equity to borrow against in the future if necessary.
I fully support the city's pay-as-you-go policy and would never change it. And I have a couple of reasons for that. Interest is just an expense with no benefit to a single person in the city. It is literally the only city expense that holds that dubious distinction, so why would we want to pay it? Secondly, borrowing is a vicious circle, and once the floodgates open, there's no turning back. The current council could probably name half a dozen capital projects that we would complete if we borrowed, and we could all say, that's it, no further borrowing. A few years down the road, we have an election. New council gets in, new priorities, and a list of capital items that they want to get done. It's now justified that because the previous council borrowed, the new council can borrow. And so it begins. And before you know it, interest is turning into a significant expense. We see it at the higher levels of government with no end in sight. My humble opinion, borrowing should be the last option we look at, not the first option.
Definitely being fiscally responsible is a big thing for all of our community. They need to know that City Hall is spending our money wisely. But what they do need is they need reassurance that what they're paying for, our infrastructure, our residential parks, and our commercial parks, all of our recreation is up to par. Moving forward from there, we also have dikes, sewers, waters, and policing and fire. So, in my opinion, as long as we're not putting any of our community at risk, this is probably a good plan.
Like any good policy, I think we need to look at it under the lens of the current situation, our current economic situation. I think we're pretty lucky not to have incurred any debt. I think we're pretty lucky that we've been relatively fiscally conservative at the City of Chilliwack, and that we take the taxpayer very seriously in their ability to pay. Now, that being said, I think reviewing policies year over year and under the lens of a new council would be a positive thing. I've been a director with the Municipal Finance Authority, and so if the city ever chooses to pursue financing opportunities, we have the ability to with very low-cost borrowing alternatives than regular opportunities that citizens would have. So if we do want to pursue borrowing opportunities ever in the City of Chilliwack, we have avenues that we can do so.
I agree and am grateful for the pay-as-you-go philosophy of the City of Chilliwack. I do believe that this pay-as-you-go philosophy helps us lean on our provincial and federal governments and the relationships that we continue to make with them. This helps to keep property taxes affordable for local Chilliwack residents.
I think it's important to note that the fiscal responsibility of the current council and mayor is great. I mean, they've done such a good job. I did learn, though, as chair of the Board of Education, that with the growth, we're going to keep growing. That's the fact, and we have to put in capital plans in the school district in order to get new schools. And if you put in a capital plan to the provincial government early, it's a bit of a risk because you could get declined, and then they tend to keep declining that capital project. So we had to take a risk to apply for those projects to get those schools built, and those schools are now being built. So in the same sense on city, it doesn't work the same way, but taking a little bit of risk to build a little bit of infrastructure, knowing that we are not slowing down in our growth anytime soon. So taking a little bit of risk to ensure that infrastructure is there that we know we're going to need anyways. I think that I would be willing to do that, but I understand how individual councillors maybe feel uncomfortable being the first one to say that. But if we have the data and we've done our due diligence and we know we're going to need the infrastructure, then I wouldn't have a problem with investing early.
think I'm up first, aren't I?
You are.
Awesome.
You are up first. Hot mic.
Hot mic. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's All Candidates Forum. We're very pleased that you could all join us here tonight for tonight's very special event in our community. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Stalo people, and we are honored to live, work, and play on these lands. So on behalf of the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Chilliwack BIA, thank you again for coming, and we hope you enjoy this evening. Trevor.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Trevor from the Downtown Chilliwack Business Improvement Association. My great pleasure to be here with you all, and thank you for doing this. We're also live streaming, so welcome all the folks that are watching via live stream. We are just so thrilled to do this and to be a part of this process, especially with our partnership with the Chamber is so strong, so we love doing this. We'll be using Slido.com for tonight's event, but only for the councillors' portion, and we're doing that for reasons of time. So for the mayor's portion, we have pre-selected questions. The councillors will move into the Slido and we'll explain that during the councillors' portion. You can use the code to enter the events. Make sure that you log in with your code, and it's hashtag Chilliwack Debate, so hashtag CHWK Debate. Again, only for the councillors' portion of the evening. And we would ask you to please... Perfect timing, man. That's how it is. Please, everybody knows everybody's scrambling for your phones. Just please shut your ringers off for the portion of this debate. Thank you, Leanna.
Awesome, thanks. So tonight we're going to hear from both mayoral candidates as well as 11 of the 12 council candidates. Please know that Deborah Sutar would have loved to attend tonight's event. However, due to her son's wedding today, a very special occasion, she's unable to be here with us. Please remember that this is a professional setting where we have all come to listen and learn the various platforms that our candidates are running on. Keep your questions respectful and focused on the issues pertaining to our business community.
And without further ado, we're done our job, and we turn the microphone over to the very qualified Diane Jansen. She's the Executive Director of Chilliwack Community Services. Nice round of applause for our moderator, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
I have one more thing to say. If the council candidates are in the room, at 7:45, there's going to be a short break for the audience to use the washroom, go get a glass of water, or drink, whatever you would like. But if we can invite the council candidates to join us on stage and get set, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone. Chilliwack, both here at the Chilliwack Cultural Centre and also online. We very much appreciate your interest in our democratic process, and it's something that we all hold very, very dear. We're going to have two separate debates. The first will be the mayoral candidate debate with the two candidates, and the second after the break will be with potential city councillors. Just want to go over the format. We'll go right into it here. We're going to allow for a 2-minute opening, and we would like our candidates to answer the question, who are you, and why have you chosen to run for mayor? Then we'll move to 4 questions that have been prepared by the Chamber of Commerce and the BIA. And then finally, there will be a 2-minute wrap-up. So we're going to go right into it. We are going to, in the spirit of fairness, be looking to make sure that nobody goes over 2 minutes. So I have something here called a mute button. And so at 2 minutes, the thing is shut off. So I'm just giving everybody a notice about brevity. The other thing, and I know this is something very close to my heart, is, you know, you see on social media how nasty people have become. That's not how we roll in Chilliwack. So I ask everyone, candidates and the audience, for respect. The idea is to get from our candidates what they stand for so that on the 15th you can make an educated choice. So let's get into it. I'm going to ask Ian Carmichael to speak to us for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Ian Carmichael, and I'm running for mayor of Chilliwack. Before I start, I'd like to thank the BIA and the Chamber of Commerce and their staffs for all the hard work that they've put in to this to organize this event. A little about me. I'm
fairly simple, practical, and pragmatic kind of guy. My experience in senior management taught me a few basic principles that have served me well over the years. One, know your role. As mayor, my duty is to serve the people of Chilliwack and the businesses that serve our community. Two, know your challenges and objectives. Understand the issues in the broadest sense possible. Be clear on your intended consequences of your actions and prepare for the unintended consequences of your actions. Three, have a clear path to your objectives. The devil really is in the details. Ensure you have good benchmarks along the path, because if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Know the long-term implications of your actions and your choices. The shovel that we put in the ground today will be with our community for the next 4, 5, or 10 decades. So dig carefully. I'm Ian Carmichael. If after this evening you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. It's my hope and desire you'll join with me in the community as we come together and just work for better. Oh, and before you shut me off, I have one promise to make to the people of Chilliwack, and one promise only. If elected mayor, I promise that I will get a new suit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So Ken Popoff, to answer the same question for 2 minutes, please introduce yourself and let us know why you have chosen to run for mayor.
Well, first, I don't think Ian's suit's that bad, but if he is going to spend the money, that's all good. And I want to say that I want to get that mute feature into City Hall, because that's actually a pretty good idea. I'm Ken Popoff. I am the mayor of Chilliwack. At this point, I'm asking for your support to carry on. These past couple of years certainly have been demanding with the pandemic that we went through, the heat dome, the water issue, the murder hornets, to name a few, and there were some fires in there as well. Our team, being on council, our team in administration, our team in operations, we persevered. We came through with flying colors. Yes, we were an island for 3 or 4 days back in November, but we all got together and worked as a team, and we got Chilliwack out of this mess, and we carried on. We had over 40 instances of issues, landslides, culvert blowouts, creeks, etc. Again, I'm proud of our operations. They were working 24/7 to get our infrastructure back on track. Again, I work with a team. My team of councillors, we all banded together, and we all work together very well. And I think I've proven, I know I've proven myself and our team for the community. As you see the things that have happened through infrastructure, through redevelopment, you know, Chilliwack's on the right track to being a real cool place to hang your hat. I'm Ken Popoff. I would like to talk about more of our accomplishments, but there are too many. If you go to kenpopoff.ca, I will have them listed on our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. So we're going to move to the 4 questions. These were prepared by the Chamber. They are not on Slido, but you can participate on Slido for the council portion. The first question, and I'll ask Ian Carmichael this question. The Chilliwack and District Real Estate Board indicates that the cost of a single detached home in Chilliwack is now $1 million, more than double 5 years ago. Rental prices have increased by 29% in 1 year. What will you do to make housing more affordable?
That's a great question. Thank you. I will agree that the real estate board's numbers are valid. We have doubled our prices in the last 5 years. But if you go back 10 years, there have been 2 doubling periods. So our prices have gone from roughly $250,000 to $500,000 to $1 million in just 10 short years. And we've got a problem in our community. One of those problems is that our urban containment zone is now full. And you don't have to take my word for that. In a recent program on Chill TV, Chilliwack Now, former Mayor Clint Hames proposed that to our mayor, who said that, yeah, the only problem is the ALC, the Agricultural Land Commission, won't let us expand into the agricultural lands, and developers don't want to build high rises because it's too darn expensive. That didn't give me confidence that we've actually got a plan for how and where we're going to be going in the next 10, 20, 40 years. I know that we will have to go up. We have to put more people in less land, but we can do that. We can build a compact city that has more amenities, has better livability, has better transportation for our community. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to working with a council that will take that challenge and bring it home to the people of Chilliwack. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. Over to Ken Popoff. If you need me to repeat the question, I can do that.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Ms. Jansen. Chilliwack being one of the fastest growing communities in Western Canada, we grew an unprecedented over 12%. We are now over 100,000 people in Chilliwack. Affordable housing is a question. It is something that's before council. We have done our bit and will continue to do our bit to keep things as low as possible by way of our fee structure, our lower taxes. We have allowed for suites, carriage houses to be used for lower rental ideas, if you will, opposed to what we did in the past. It definitely is a challenge. There's something that's called the STEP code that is now being introduced by the province that our developers have to embrace and work with. That code comes to our developers here in Chilliwack. They have to navigate their way through that, and with that, there is a cost attached to that. And that cost will be borne to the folks that actually purchase these houses. So it's definitely challenging. We will work with all our developers. We do subsidize our supportive housing units, which we have a couple, brings the rent down to $375 a month, which is really reasonable. But it is a problem. It's a challenge with the amount of growth that we've had in the last couple of years, but we will continue to try to tackle this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to switch it up a bit and ask Ken Popoff to answer this question first. Research shows that Chilliwack is 23rd out of 58 communities in property taxes for communities over 10,000 in British Columbia. If you become mayor, will you work to lower taxes, keep them the same, or increase them, and why?
Well, our tax base is the lowest in the Fraser Valley if you even contribute to the utility side of it as well. And I'm proud of that. We have taken on a pay-as-you-go philosophy that was instituted before my time, but the strategy has kept on moving forward. Keeping taxes low, attract people to this area. Our commercial base is growing with what's happening downtown. I'm sure you've all seen the development downtown. We will endeavor to keep our taxes low for the personal households and for the businesses as well. We want to attract everybody to keep on coming to Chilliwack, and by way of keeping our taxes low, we will accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to Ian Carmichael for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Diane. I believe Chilliwack has a long history of fiscal responsibility. Our challenge has and continues to be the tax revenue burden falls mainly on residential owners due to the lack of business, commercial, and industrial tax base that the community has. Despite the claim, Chilliwack is one of the lowest tax jurisdictions in the region. As Diane just pointed out, analysis actually puts us in the middle of the pack. Revenues are not the challenge in my view, as much as the other side of the ledger, the expenditures. Public safety portion of our budget has for years now provided insufficient funding for our fire protection services. For a community of 100,000 plus residents, we have less than 30 full-time firefighters ready to respond today to an emergency. Just last week, we had an interface fire break out in Promontory. This type of fire poses an unacceptable risk to our community. This is the type of fire that destroyed over 200 homes, over 150 of them in one night in Kelowna in 2003. Our paid on-call and professional firefighters have been requesting training and equipment to battle this type of threat for years and have been met with deaf ears. This is just one area where I believe our funding priorities can be refocused. The first duty of elected officials is to protect the safety and security of our population. In this instance, I think we can work for better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. I'm going to change it up again and have Ian Carmichael answer this question first for 2 minutes. With Chilliwack's growth, our transportation systems have been challenged. As mayor, what will you do about gridlock, infrastructure, bike transportation, and what is your position on regional transportation, such as an integrated rail service?
Thanks for the question. As I pointed out earlier, one of the ways that we can help reduce our traffic problems and our transportation issues in the city is to build a compact and complete city where walkability, cycling, and public transit are able to take much of the burden. I would like to work towards that. As far as regional transportation, many people believe that we should be working towards a rail link from Chilliwack to the lower mainland. Many suggest that we use the old BC Hydro Railway, currently operated by SRY, based in New Westminster. I'm not in favor of that for one reason. I work for a railroad. I know that railroad and that piece of track. The cost to upgrade that will be in the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. As it stands right now, that track has a track speed of 25 miles an hour and will take approximately 4 hours to get to New Westminster. So without massive investments from the provincial and federal governments, we're not able to look at a reasonable, sustainable project just to service Chilliwack and the communities from New Westminster out. There are other options. I believe that we could build a dedicated line using technology, LRT, ground-based transportation, directly through municipalities out to Chilliwack, and that would be my preferred route to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. So we're going to have our last question for the mayoral candidates. I will turn it over. Oh, sorry. Ken, over to you.
Sure, and if you can repeat the question, please, just so I can...
With Chilliwack's growth, our transportation systems have been challenged. As mayor, what will you do about gridlock, infrastructure, bike transportation, and what is your position on regional transportation, such as integrated rail service?
Thank you for the question. Oh, sorry, here we go. In the past couple of years, we've spent an unprecedented amount of money. I think it's north of $15 million rebuilding the Vetter Road connector from Watson Road to Keith Wilson, Promontory Road, to try to capture the growth that we're experiencing. The biggest challenge that we have is we're landlocked. When we are going to expand property or roadways, we need to either purchase or expropriate the said lands to make this work. A challenging issue, as all of you know. Touching on the Vetter Road piece, We had started that project, and then we got 2 feet of rain, which stalled that project for, I think it was about 18 months until that got up and running. So it certainly was a challenging time for us. We will continue to work on our local infrastructure. We are going to improve the intersection of Vitta Road and South Sumas, which has been a problem intersection for years. We will continue the Press Road expansion as well, and in the future, we will do the Watson Road widening as well. As far as the rail, it's a costly strategy to move forward. I'm not in favor of it. I would rather see us spend our money on the cycling infrastructure that we've worked on and carry on with our Valley Trail that will take us right into Yarrow. Talks are ongoing with BC Rail to do that, and we will see that to fruition, hopefully, in my next term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. For the last question, I'm going to ask Ken Popoff first. Businesses are key to the success of Chilliwack. Tell us what you know about the business environment in Chilliwack, and what will you do as a mayor to support increased business investment and local employment opportunities for Chilliwack residents?
Well, that strategy is already in place. Just to back up a little bit, we created what's called a SEPCO. That's the Chilliwack Economic Partners, and they have a different type of power than what the city has. They attract and retain businesses that want to come to Chilliwack. It's a strategy that has worked well. You can see in our downtown redevelopment with the Agra project, 1881, and SEPCO has purchased the buildings on Wellington, and that'll soon be revitalized as well. We keep our fees low, we keep our taxation low. Our industrial revitalization tax for new businesses coming in that works on a sliding scale has worked well to attract businesses here. The biggest problem that we have here in Chilliwack is our lack of industrial land. They're not making land anymore. So we have to become creative, work with our First Nations partners, and see what other businesses are willing to come and hang their hat in Chilliwack, which we all know is a great place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to Ian for 2 minutes.
I'll just, if I could, Diane. Is that working?
Nope. Try this one. Nassau, we have a problem.
Okay, here's the sign. Oh, there we go. Sorry, could I get the question again, please, Diane?
Businesses are key to the success of Chilliwack. Tell us what you know about the business environment in Chilliwack, and what will you do as a mayor to support increased business investment and local employment opportunities for Chilliwack residents?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I'll refer back to my introduction. As mayor, I see my role as being that of a facilitator with a clear purpose. How will any project development proposal that is brought forward to our council answer a simple question? What's in this for Chilliwack, and how does it make our community better? Our mayor today likes to boast that our community has the fastest approval processes in the region. For me, it's not the role of council to approve proposals, then be left to figure out the benefits. It's the role of proponents to convince our council that their ideas meet the needs of our community and the long-term objectives of our community. In building a community, we have to take the time and care to get it right the first time, because once that shovel is in the ground, we can't and won't be given the time to do it over again. On top of that, I'd like to just point out that as far as our 9-step program is concerned that the provincial government brought into effect, I am fully in favor of that. Mr. Popoff has indicated that this is a problem, that it's a cost problem. I'm actually right in the middle of this. I have some experience with the legislation. The legislation has no mandates as to materials or building techniques that must be used. What it does do is it provides clear objectives for the construction industry to build net zero housing, which is something that we desperately need going forward. We will get to net zero by 2032, and I support that program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. Because we've had such succinct candidates, there has been an additional question asked. So I'm going to pose that, starting with Ken Popoff and moving to Ian Carmichael. The City of Chilliwack has always had a save and spend debt-free approach with regards to our budget. Do you support this as a continued philosophy for city spending, or do you have other ideas regarding property taxes and municipal spending?
Absolutely want to keep it the same track as we've been going. If you look at it, all of our amenities, our artificial turf fields, which we have more than GVRD, our new pump track, our new rinks, our new curling facility, they're all paid for. We carry no debt. I believe that strategy is something that's important to stay on track with. It'll keep our taxes low, and we will continue to have awesome amenities for future families and people that move into Chilliwack and want to live here. I feel that's a very important component of the taxation issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Ian Carmichael for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for the question. I think largely we've already answered this one. It's just a rewording of the earlier question that we had with respect to taxation levels. I am a fiscally responsible individual. So working within budgets is something that I'm used to. I've worked with very large budgets, not as large as this community's, but I've worked with very large budgets in my past lives. And I believe the real question is not so much the revenue end as the expenditure end. Where are we allocating funding to increase the livability of our community, to increase the amenities and the green spaces that our families are requiring? On Fairfield Island, a community that was developed 50-odd years ago, there are numerous kinder parks that are within walking distance of every residence in that community. Somehow by the 1990s, we lost that vision. And when we look at Promontory, there are very few amenities, but I believe that we can come together as a community and work for better for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we're going to provide a 2-minute opportunity for the candidates to provide closing statements, and I will start with Ken Popoff.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Diane. Like I started with, this last couple, 3 years has been challenging for everybody. I'm proud of the work that we've done, what we've continued to do through the pandemic, through the disasters that we had to experience. My team at the council table has been solid. We all work together well. We make decisions. We don't agree on everything, but then we go for a beer later, and that's the way it should work. We all get along. That has been the real groundswell of work that I've been involved with. My administration staff, our operations staff are second to none. And for me, I'm proud to be able to try and serve for another year. Or another term, I'm sorry. I'd be proud to do that, to watch the continued growth of Chilliwack. It's never going to be perfect, but I feel that we are on the right track. And yeah, this is my city. I love my city, and I'll always continue to love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Popov. Over to Ian Carmichael for 2 minutes.
And thank you very much, Diane. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get an opportunity to talk about one of the really pressing issues in our community, and that's housing affordability and our homeless situation. If anybody is interested in talking to me about what we can do about that, I support the Housing First initiative, and I believe it's the way that we are going to be able to address our homeless situation and affordable housing. But I want to thank everyone that's here this evening and those watching at home for investing your valuable time in our democracy. There are clear choices in this election. We know that we live today with the decisions made by councils over the past 40 years. Do we continue along the path and in that mindset, or do we choose a reasonable, rational, and realistic plan forward for the next 40 years? I choose to face the economic, social, environmental, and climatic challenges heading our way with eyes wide open and head on. I do it for our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, so they can live in peace and security that we have enjoyed for our entire lifetimes. On October 15th, I respectfully ask you to join me in the community where together we can all start to work for better. Thank you very much, and good evening.
Thank you, Ian, very much. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the mayoral candidates and to encourage you all to get out on October 15th to make your choice. We're now going to break for 15 minutes, and we will return for the council debates with the 11 out of 12 candidates there. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in 15.
Thanks, Ken.
Welcome back, Chilliwack, to our second portion of our debate, and this is for City Council. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank all councillors, potential councillors, for coming to this debate and giving you the opportunity to see what they're all about. This is where your participation is really important. So whether you're at home or here, you can go on to Slido and vote for a question or pose a new question. And then you can also do that from your phone. So we do encourage you to do that. The sooner you do it, the better. And the way it's working is I only ask the top question that is in the queue where people have voted for that question. So just a couple of rules. I reiterate the 1 minute limit and the 2 minute limit. And I will be using the mute button. I didn't have to do that last time, so that was really great. And also just that we are respectful here in Chilliwack, and we want to continue that in this portion. So what we're going to do is a 1 minute opening for each for each candidate, followed by 2 minutes ability to answer the question. There are 11 questions, and the 12th question is an opportunity for one of the 3 people who answers each question to answer one they maybe haven't had an opportunity to do. So each question is answered by 3 potential councillors, so we're going to be working it that way. Then there's a closing opportunity for a minute, and then that will be the end of the evening. So what we're going to do is start by working our way alphabetically down, and then for the close, we will start with Harv Westring and move our way this way. So with that, we're going to start with a timer that's in front of all candidates here. And the Slido question will pop up as well in terms of the next question that we're asking. So I'm going to ask you a minute to indicate who you are and why you're interested in representing our city as a councillor. I will start with Brent Boker. Yes, you do. The other thing I should mention, we had a bit of technical difficulty before. Once you're done speaking, if you can just press the button, we can't have more than one mic that's live, so that's the challenge we've got. Okay, over to you, Brent.
Okay, you can hear me? Perfect.
You're good.
My name is Brent Bowker, so thanks everybody for coming here tonight. I don't have any lawn signs, so this is your opportunity to take this all in. My face will not be scattered around town. Hopefully that's a good thing for you all. I come from a tech background, so I'm currently a stay-at-home dad, but spent 12 years selling software, doing project management, working for a global company selling into real estate companies and also electric and gas utilities. So experience with large business, large corporations in that capability, and I think at the moment looking to run to share what I've learned and where I'm at in life with everybody as a counselor. So I certainly want to put families first. I've got 2 young kids, they're 5 and 2. Hopefully they're in bed right now. Making sure we keep taxes low so we have money in our pockets to spend on our family and joyous things in life rather than giving money to cities, and also investing in our active transportation, so making sure we can get around this city through many ways other than our cars.
That's time. Thank you. Over to Craig Hill for a minute.
Hi, I'm a retired certified publisher. 12 years in Chilliwack producing a online news company, 20 years producing magazines in Vancouver. And Mom and Dad were met and married in Chilliwack. Mom's cousin was Lorraine at Armstrong Santa Gravel. Dad's side was great-great-grandfather, Jules Maurice Quinnell, on the Quinnells on the Simon Fraser expedition. Some of you may know this.
And that is time. My apologies. Over to Chris Clute.
Thank you, Diane, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be here in person or watch online with us. My name is Chris Clute. I'm a second-term city councillor. I'm looking for a mandate for my third term. I'm a lifelong resident. My wife and I own a dairy farm in East Chilliwack, and we milk a herd of Jersey cows. Born and raised in agriculture. I've also been a realtor for the last 20 years. I'm passionate about sustainable growth, protecting our farmland, and a number of other things, and I only get 32 seconds left here, so check out voteforclute.com. I have 8 stops for a road to a better Chilliwack. I believe I have the experience, I'm passionate, I'm responsible, and I would welcome the opportunity to represent you again for another term on City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Jason Lum for a minute.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Lum, and I'm a 3-term city councillor with the city of Chilliwack. I'm also a 5-term board chair with the Fraser Valley Regional District. It's been my life's greatest pleasure to serve the city of Chilliwack and the broader Fraser Valley. I'm a past president of this organization, the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a past vice president of the Fraser Valley Healthcare Foundation and have served on a number of different boards in a number of different capacities. The most important thing that I'm doing these days lately is I'm a dad of a 2-year-old. So that's what's changed in the last 4 years, and nothing changes your focus more than being a father, and nothing gives me more energy and hope for the future of this city than looking at my little boy every night. So if you support me again, my name is Jason Lum. I'm respectfully asking for your vote on October 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Over to Mike McClatchy.
Hello, everyone. Similar to Jason's speech, I too am from Chilliwack. Been here for over 40 years. My family survived, well, they came out actually better than I thought, given that they had to put up with me their whole entire life. But they did, when I told them I was going to run for city council, they just looked at me and said, "You got this. We know what you're like. You're passionate about everything that you do." I've had my business in Chilliwack. My kids were 6 years old answering the phone. They knew what business in Chilliwack is about. And what I want to do is continue that growth in Chilliwack so that everyone here who either has a business or a family can recognize the passion that I also have for Chilliwack.
Thank you very much. That was about as perfect as it gets. Over to Bud Mercer for a minute.
Thank you, Diane. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for being here tonight. My name is Bud Mercer. My family and I have lived in Chilliwack since 1992, except for 5 very, very, very long years in Ottawa. I served in the RCMP for 35 years all across Canada. In 1992, I was here in Chilliwack and rose to the ranks of being the commander for Chilliwack in the Fraser Valley. My last job in the RCMP was 2007 as the assistant commissioner responsible for security for the Vancouver 2010 Olympics. At that time, I had over 16,000 employees and $550 million budget. Whether here in Chilliwack or during my life in the RCMP, I looked after organized crime. I traveled Canada and the world. In 2009, I was awarded the Order of Merit from the Governor General of Canada for my efforts both in Canada and internationally. When I retired...
That is time. Thank you. Over to Jared Mumford for a minute.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm speaking to you from the unceded territory of the Stolo people today. I was born and raised in Chilliwack, and I'm raising my family here now. And I'm your current board chair of the Chilliwack Board of Education. Some of you know me from around town. I am the co-chair of CHC, and I'm the vice chair of numerous boards, including the Downtown Market and Chilliwack Restorative Justice. I'm on the Food Council, and all of those opportunities to serve this community have filled my heart. They've given me extensive governance experience and leadership skills that I otherwise may not have acquired, so I have you to thank for that. I want to continue to serve, and over the course of tonight, you're going to hear from candidates about what they're going to do if they get your vote and they get elected to council. And I want you to pivot that question a little bit when you're listening to the answers and ask, what have you done to already earn it? I think that I've done a lot in this community to earn your vote, and I want to try and prove that tonight if I get the chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to Amber Price for a minute.
The moment has arrived, the moment. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much to the Chamber of Commerce and to Diane Jansen for this evening. I also want to recognize that we are standing on the unceded territory of the Stalo Nation. My name is Amber Price, and I've had the privilege of getting to know many of you in my role as owner of the Bookman in downtown Chilliwack. I'm also a founder and director of the Chilliwack Mural Festival. I love this city, and I'm woven deep into the fabric of this community. For the past 24 years, I have served on impactful boards, task groups, and committees, including 2 that were appointed by Mayor and Council, being Tourism Chilliwack and SEPCO. I'm really looking forward to tonight, and I'm so glad that you came out here to participate in this important aspect of the democratic process. When we're engaged and we ask tough questions of our councillors, we get better results. My name is Amber Price, and I believe that we are better together. Thank you.
Nicole Heidema-Reid for a minute.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Nicole Heidema-Reid. I am a lifelong resident of Chilliwack, growing up here on my parents' farm and working extremely hard to make food for everybody's table in our community and around the province of British Columbia. As General Manager of Community Futures South Fraser, I've had the great opportunity to work with many small and medium-sized businesses in our local community and helping to develop and encourage them to continue to grow and provide the services we need here to keep everybody local and work towards a great community. My community involvement includes Chilliwack Healthier Community, and on that I have served on the Poverty Reduction Task Team, the Food Security Task Team, Transportation Innovations, as well as Mental Health Awareness. On October 15th, please vote Heidema-Reid.
Thank you. Over to Jeff Shields for a minute.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Jeff Shields, and I've just completed my first term on council, and I'm looking for your support to serve a second term. Professionally, I'm a chartered accountant. For the past 22 years, I've been CFO for the Fisher Group of companies. I have a deep belief in giving back to the community, and over the years have served on numerous boards and committees, including Big Brothers, Chilliwack Flight Fest, SEPCO, Rotary, and Community Services. My specific roles within the city the last 4 years have included Chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee, and Council Liaison to SEPCO, Chilliwack Cultural Centre, and the BIA. We have seen many successes over the last 4 years. If elected, I promise to continue to focus on economic development, fiscal management, responsible development, public safety, and roads and infrastructure. We have a great team that has done good work over the last 4 years, and I hope to continue to bring my unique skill set to the council table. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Harv Westring for a minute.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Harv Westring. All of us candidates are here tonight because we are passionate about Chilliwack and because we want the best for Chilliwack. Looking into the future, I see the perfect version of Chilliwack different than other people do. How we get there is the question. As 2021 has shown us, the path is not always linear. There will be all kinds of events and pressures that can throw you off course, but you can't be haphazard reacting wildly to every situation.
You need to maintain your heading to provide stable local government, but you also need to be nimble enough to react immediately when needed. To do this, you need to be a team player. You can't get everything you want all the time. You need to be able to compromise. Over the last 4 years, I have a public track record of getting things done. You know what you get with me. I'm approachable, compassionate, and focused, and I also get things done. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I would like to take just a bit of a break. Just want to make sure that we're all okay. All right? All right, what we're going to do is move to the 12 rounds of questions. Candidates have 2 minutes to answer these questions. So what you will see is it'll pop up on the screen. A screen is a Slido, and as I mentioned, I'm only reading the question that has the top number of votes for it. So with that, every individual has 3 chances in terms of each question. And then there will be a round 12, and round 12 is the opportunity for you to answer questions you didn't have an opportunity to answer. So I'm going to recommend everybody does have paper and pen there to record any question that you haven't been called up to answer. We will then go back in round 12, and individuals will have 2 minutes for that. And then closing remarks is another minute. So round 1, the first of the question, and this is for Brent Boker, Craig Hill, and Nicole Heidema-Reid. Transportation continues to be a barrier to many residents of Chilliwack to access services and employment opportunities. This is evident within our Indigenous communities that fall within Chilliwack boundaries. What is your stance on connecting transportation corridors within the 9 communities? So over to Brent Boker, Craig Hill, and Nicole Heidema-Reid, each for 2 minutes.
All right. When I was preparing for today, I looked through at the city's 10-year municipal plan, and that'll probably come up a few times here tonight because that's where the budget is done. And I think I largely agree with where they've planned to spend in terms of roads, cycling infrastructure for the next 10 years. There's certainly things I would like to see sooner, but that's part of being on council is debating and deciding when those things happen. I'm less clear on what the future plan is for transit for connecting these communities, and I would like to dive into that if I get that privilege to join council. And make sure that folks have the ability to have transit as an option. And I think I'd also like to increase the investment in cycling infrastructure. There is plans for that. There is a cycling plan. And I think my effort on council would be to make sure we follow through with those plans and make sure that the infrastructure gets built to connect the various communities. We certainly do have many pockets in the city. I know I live further to the south, and there's a pocket there in Garrison, and downtown is its own pocket, and there's other ones like that around the city. And I think we want to encourage those hubs to grow so we can go to our corner of the city to get what we need, and then also go other places for, go out on the town, downtown, whatever else we want to get done. And hopefully we have a variety of what means we can use to get there. Car, bus, walk, and riding your bike as being kind of the main ones that we think of. Although where I live, people seem to ride their horses around too, so maybe we need some of that infrastructure built out as well.
Thank you for that answer. Over to Craig Hill, and if any candidates wish me to reread the question, I certainly can do that. So over to you, Craig.
I wondered if
Sorry, I did turn mine off. There you go.
I wondered, I had a couple of points to make, but they aren't really on this list. Will I be able to make a couple of points later on?
Yeah, so what would be really good would be for your closing statements. You can use that time for whatever purpose you would like. All right. Anything you'd like to comment about this question?
And the question we're being asked now is?
I'll repeat it. Transportation continues to be a barrier to many residents of Chilliwack to access services and employment opportunities. This is evident within our Indigenous communities that fall within Chilliwack's boundaries. What is your stance on connecting transportation corridors within the 9 communities?
Well, one of the main things I see is the lack of attention to Young Road. It looks like it did 60 years ago when my mom and dad were married. It has the highest heat index in the city. It lacks attention. Nobody's paid any attention to Young Road in 60 years. So it needs some attention. Mainly just upgrade it. And that's about all I have to say about the infrastructure.
Thank you, Craig. Over to Nicole Heidemer-Reed. Is the mic turned off? Is
I'm
your
good.
mic turned
Thanks,
off?
Dan.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you for this question. Workforce and employment is a really key piece to my platform. Chilliwack has a great active transportation plan, so we really need to make sure that our community stays a walkable community and continue to build on the bike and cycling trails that we do have throughout the community to help people get to work in a sustainable way. The City of Chilliwack spends about $700,000 a year on that cycling path, and I think that that's a great amount of money to spend towards green transportation and getting to all corners of the city. I also know from firsthand experience how difficult it is to get out to our manufacturing facilities throughout the city, outside of the city limits. And many of these jobs are quality jobs, and the transportation does not sufficiently reach those communities. So I would like to work in partnership with the province and BC Transit to enhance the services that go around our communities so that people can get to work. With the rate of ICBC and gas these days, it's costs a lot of money to get to work. So let's make it affordable for people to get to where they need to go. And for the Indigenous communities, we really need to support our Indigenous friends in helping them, assisting them to get to work in a convenient way. Sometimes the bus system isn't as straight and narrow as we need it to be, so we need to continue to partner with our First Nations communities and enhance our workforce opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. So for round 2, we will have Chris Clute, Jason Lum, and Mike McClatchy answer the following question. Chilliwack is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. Challenges such as homelessness and rising crime rates are impacting communities throughout North America. Tell us what you know about social issues in Chilliwack and how you would tackle them if you get elected. So I'm going to give that question to Chris Clute for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. Great question. Certainly, like every other community, the challenges of homelessness and crime dominate a lot of our time here at City Hall. What you may not know is that the city has worked consistently with provincial partners to realize the Housing First model beds for those who are living rough on the streets. Since I've been on council, and I've been privileged to be on council since 2014, in the first term from 2015 to 2018, there was $1.7 million in development cost charges that were waived, as well as 130 supportive housing units. In the following term of 2019 to 2022, 3.1 million fees were waived for affordable housing through the development cost charging, as well as 127 supportive housing units, 46 shelter beds, and 9 female recovery beds. 115 units under construction or about to begin construction, as well as 42 shelter beds, for a total in the past 7.5 years of 372 supportive housing units within our community. 44% of our budget is spent on protective services. Since my time on council, at the time when I joined in 2014, 2 police officers were projected for every year, but we bolstered that up considerably as the growth continued to grow in our community, and we added 19, and as well as with this term, another 19 plus 8 support positions. So we've also have 41 career firefighters, and in this past term, we have added 8 firefighters, as well as a training officer, as well as providing equipment for our firefighters to keep them as effective as possible. So lots of work is happening. There's still lots more to do, and that's part of why I'm running for council again, is because it's hard to lay it down when so much work is about to...
That's time. Sorry. Over to Jason Lum.
Thank you. Tell us what you know about social issues. This is what I know about social issues in Chilliwack. They are extremely difficult. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to tackle them. You heard from my colleague, Councillor Clute, on the work that the City of Chilliwack has done in the past number of terms. But we can't do it alone. The other thing I know is that this community has a huge heart for helping those who need it. And you can't deal with any of these challenges without being empathetic, without trying to understand the root causes, the trauma, the things that are causing people to end up in this situation that they're in. So it requires empathy, it requires time, and it requires a tremendous amount of resources, of which the city is one prominent player, but so is the province of British Columbia. And one of the things I pride myself on is being a very passionate advocate for solutions from the province of British Columbia. We work very closely with BC Housing, we work very closely with Fraser Health. In the past term, I've been privileged to serve on the Community Safety Task Force alongside Councillor Mercer. And we've looked at a multi-stakeholder approach to tackling crime, homelessness, and public safety in the city of Chilliwack. The other thing is we've brought up issues around prolific offenders and prolific offender management, and we've brought issues to the province of British Columbia. Since I served as a director with the Union of BC Municipalities, we brought up the issue multiple times that a small percentage of people are causing a huge percentage of crime in the city of Chilliwack. And so until we figure out a better way of dealing with that, we're going to be back in the same situation we're in.
That's time. Thank you. And Mike McClatchy for 2 minutes. Yes, I can. Chilliwack is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. Challenges such as homelessness and rising crime rates are impacting communities throughout North America. Tell us what you know about social issues in Chilliwack and how you would tackle them if you were to get elected.
Thank you. As you can tell, Councilman Lum and Clute, they've been dealing with this for quite a few years, firsthand. And what I can tell you that I've seen over the last couple of years is this is a very desirable place for the homeless to live. Other communities know how our outreach system works and that it's top-notch. I believe within the last 2 weeks, we've had a couple of busloads more of homelessness brought into Chilliwack. How do we deal with it? It's never ending. We have to work directly with the provincial government and our people on the ground. I've talked to many first responders. The homelessness could be under a little more control, but there's no treatment centers. Between Chilliwack, Abbotsford, if someone was to say today that they wanted treatment, they probably have a minimum of a 6-week wait. And in that 6 weeks, they're gone again until the next time they're unfortunately with another first responder or one of our firefighters. As far as what we can do as a business, I have a business downtown. I've had a couple. And we have the empathy while we're there. But when we walk into our businesses and there's paraphernalia at our doors, there's people at our doors, we have to have a plan. I know Chilliwack has a plan. Griffin Security, they're doing a great job, but they can't be everywhere all the time. So there is definitely room for improvement for our local businesses on what City Hall is probably capable of helping out with. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to round 3, and the candidates answering this question are Bud Mercer, Jared Mumford, and Amber Price for 2 minutes each. Many voters believe the number of city councillors should increase from 6 to 8 and a permanent seat be designated for an Indigenous leader. Would you support a move in this direction? Why or why not?
Thank you, Diane. I understand from understanding a little bit about the past history of Chilliwack and Council that we did at one point have 8 councillor seats. I'm not sure what the rationale for that was at that time to move to 6. For me, I believe it is a good idea. I'm well aware of the workload that I have the capacity to take on, and I also have an understanding of the number of initiatives that are kind of sitting in the queue waiting for leadership. I think by increasing the seats on council, we'll have a broader spectrum of the initiatives that are looked at, dealt with, and they'll have leadership responsible for each of them greater than the capacity we currently have today. It also provides an opportunity to have a more diverse council. There's 2 more seats, 2 more opportunities for diversity. I happen to co-chair the Diversity, Inclusiveness and Accessibility Committee with Councillor Lum and Mayor Popoff, and it actually is one of the outcomes of that committee and the action items is to promote and advocate for leadership positions within the city. So this actually fits in nicely with the city plan. Having an Aboriginal person sitting as a councillor also is a great idea. It's also part of the reconciliation process, and it is one of the recommendations to cities and councils from both the federal and provincial government. There's so many super intelligent people that I've met over the last little while, like Derek Epp and others. I can't think of better candidates. I can't think of better candidates for council. All of this is a good idea, and I think it's something we should move forward on quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Jared Mumford for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. This is going to be a quick answer, so I just want to take the time to thank the BIA and the Chamber of Commerce, which I didn't get to do in my introduction because it was only a minute long. I mean, this is a no-brainer. I think that this is a welcome change that most people are in favor of. I know this conversation has come up recently on social media. There's talk about monetary implications. I think that costs are infinitesimal compared to the dividends that it would pay off to have a much more diverse council, and I think we would get a more diverse council if we had 8 members. As far as having an Indigenous leader or even an Indigenous elder at the table, that's a welcome part of any team I'd love to be on, and I think the next time we can advocate for 8 councillors is in the next election year, so I'll certainly be advocating for that.
Thank you. So finally, Amber Price for 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to this because it's something that I think about a lot. The BC Municipalities Act requires that any municipality with over 53,000 people have 8 to 10 councillors. And I think that we have outgrown that significantly since this bylaw was put in place in 1983. Chilliwack has undergone rapid growth, and I believe that it has left our citizens underserved. The committee that my friend Bud had mentioned, the Inclusion, Accessibility and Diversity Committee, was actually a task force, and I would love to see that permanently be put at City Hall. And I think when we work inclusion into our leadership, when we look at indigenizing within City Hall, we can then realistically expect that Indigenous leaders will want to join us at those tables. Currently, I think that the lack of Indigenous representation speaks to the atmosphere that awaits them. And I think it's really important that we do work so that they feel welcome and included at tables where they belong, in my opinion. I believe that more councillors equals more diversity and more representation. This allows for richer perspectives to come to the table and for more voices to be represented and heard. There's so much wisdom and value in our differences, and when we don't have adequate spaces for diverse voices to come, I think we are robbed as a community. So I'm very much in support of raising council to 8. I know that there are monetary implications to that. But think about when you go into a business and there's not enough people working there. The service that you receive is not as good as when there's a full staff load. And there's strain and stress on the staff because they're spread thin over too many responsibilities. So for all of these reasons, I think that we have work to do, and I would definitely support that motion.
Thank you. We're going to move to round 4. And the following candidates will answer this question: Jeff Shields, Harv Westering, and Brent Boker. And the question is, the City of Chilliwack has always had a save, then spend, debt-free approach with regards to our municipal budget. Do you support this as a continued philosophy for city spending, or do you have other ideas regarding property taxes and municipal spending? Jeff Shields for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Diane. Wow, an accountant gets that question. This is awesome. So, as you can well imagine, I've told you that I'm fiscally responsible, and it's in my nature as an accountant to be fiscally responsible. The save then spend philosophy of City Hall has done us really, really well over the years, and it's a philosophy that we should stick with. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. First off, you start borrowing, you start incurring interest expense. Interest expense contributes absolutely nothing to the city, and it's an expense item that will contribute nothing. Everything else on an income statement shows some benefit to some citizen. Interest expense, nothing. That's the boring stuff. The other side of it is you get into a scenario where, so let's just say this council right now says, okay, well, these are our priorities. We have 6 priorities. We want to borrow $20, $30 million. We want to satisfy our priorities. But we're only going to borrow this one time, and that's it, because that's it. We're saying that. Okay, that's fine. So a few years down the road, next council gets in. Well, we've got different priorities, and we want our priorities in. That last council, they got to borrow. We should get to borrow. So suddenly you have this never-ending repetition of borrowing, and before you know it, we're in situations that we find the other levels of government in, where there's non-stop spending, and you've got government that just they make promises while they're campaigning, and they want to follow through with it. The only way to do it is to borrow. And suddenly you're in a terrible position. We were very, very lucky during the pandemic. We had no debt. The city of Chilliwack sailed through the pandemic without any issues whatsoever. And
that's time. Harv Westering for 2 minutes.
Thanks, Diane. Our pay-as-you-go philosophy has done us well as a city. In council, we earmark certain projects in our 10-year comprehensive municipal plan, and we do that once a year typically in November. And we sit around the table and we arm wrestle about different things, different priorities, and this is where the teamwork thing comes in. Everyone has different priorities, but at the end of the day, we earmark certain things in the capital project, and we put it in year 5 or 4, and we start allocating money towards it. And then somewhere along the line, we get enough money so that we can pay for big ticket items when the opportunity arises. And this will allow us to get funding from the feds of the province. Often the senior levels of government will earmark certain things for infrastructure projects, and if our ideas fit their criteria, then we can stretch our tax dollars sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times as far. So that's a good way to stretch your money. And we don't want to get into the habit of borrowing, because once we do, then where do you draw the line? As Jeff mentioned earlier, if we borrow as a council this time around, then what's to stop the next council? And pretty soon you start spending tax money on interest payments and debt reduction, and I don't think that's something that anyone wants. Thanks.
Thank you. Brent Boker for 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, in my personal life, I'd say I'm fairly fiscally conservative, and I would generally agree with the principle, and it's certainly served the city well, what they've done to date with spending. That said, I don't know if I necessarily agree that this is a ball that can't be stopped once you do it. There could be key pieces of infrastructure that we want to build, and maybe it's getting ahead of development in certain areas that will then pay back through taxation. I also think that a good way to do this is through ballot measures. There are ways we can put this on the ballot. Other cities do it all the time. Vancouver probably has way too many, but you can ask the voters and say, do you want us to build this recreation facility now instead of in 5 years when we saved up the cash? And I think there are benefits to having things sooner than later. Now, we all can't get everything we want, but I think putting it to voters would be one really great way to do that. I don't think we should be afraid of debt. We can get good financing. Maybe the rates are not favorable at the moment, so maybe the timing is not now. But I would say if there were key pieces of infrastructure that people were asking for and that would benefit the city, then I would think it's worth exploring the opportunity to finance and not drawing a hard line in the sand that this is something we will never do, because I think there can be benefits to taking that sort of approach. And I think putting on a ballot would be the best way, rather than council simply deciding to outlay large sums of money. You guys can decide if it's worth the extra income, the extra cost that will incur in terms of financing.
Thank you very much. So in this round, we're going to have 2 candidates answer the question. That'll be Jason Lum and Bud Mercer. And the question is, how will you work with local MLAs to advance Chilliwack priorities to the province?
Thank you. There's a number of different avenues that we work with, both in official and unofficial capacity. I mean, unofficially, you just ensure that you're building good, solid relationships with whoever's in. He's waving at me right now, so it's obviously fairly good. He's not throwing anything at me. So it's important that no matter who is in government, that you form good relationships with. Officially, we are part of the Union of BC Municipalities, where we take the opportunity every year, annually, to go up to the conference. We build resolutions where we formally present them to government around a number of different issues. This year, I spoke specifically to raising the disaster financial assistance cap for those who were affected by the terrible flooding back in November, and also about giving regional districts more flexibility when they're responding to emergencies. One thing that is very clear, or has become very clear, is that there's work that needs to be done, and I believe it's very important that the province of British Columbia understands that we're a very good partner, but we have expectations that they meet our expectations as well. And I think you can do that, and you can do it in a respectful manner. And I pride myself on being somebody who can be tough on issues and easy on people still. And I think it's been something that served me well. And if I'm re-elected, it's a path that I promise to continue to take. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bud Mercer for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. You know, Councillor Lum has very graciously laid out the framework that we use with UBCM, and he's a master at it. Not so much me. I'm a little bit harder around the edges. But I'll give you a couple of practical examples of how it's worked for us and how it's worked for council in the city. About 3 years ago, with our two past MLAs, I visited every MLA in the entire Fraser Valley from here to the BC border, to the Vancouver border. That resulted in a face-to-face meeting with the Solicitor General along with Councillor Lum. I shared with him the inequity in what the province was paying for in policing, demonstrating that Chilliwack was, in fact, the taxpayers of Chilliwack were paying for all of the provincial policing requirements outside the city. And in 24 years, the province had increased provincial policing positions by 2. It wasn't lost on him, my background. He was very supportive, and it ended up the regional district, including Chilliwack, benefiting from that and receiving additional provincial policing resources for the provincial areas as opposed to the people here in the audience paying for them. Similarly, 2 years ago, using our 2 LMLAs, they're here with us now, I got another audience, this time with the Attorney General, and again with Councillor Lum, sharing the absolute inequities with Crown Counsel and the not laying of charges, the time it takes for charge approvals, Crown Counsel not wanting to belong to committees in the city because they felt they should be independent. And as a result of those meetings brought on by our MLAs, we've seen changes in Crown Counsel. We've met with the senior leadership. Our charge approval times have started to improve, and they know we're watching. And it all comes about as the relationship with the MLAs that we have in place here in Chilliwack and area today. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to round 5. I'm just going to... And this question will be answered by Nicole Huttimer-Reid, Chris Clute, and Jared Mumford. Given that UNDRIP, and I'll spell that out for everybody, it's the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, has been adopted by our provincial and federal government, there is a major focus on Indigenous economic reconciliation. What ideas do you have to address the economic gap within Indigenous communities through Indigenous economic reconciliation? And the first person to answer that question is Nicole Huttimer-Reid.
Thank you, Diane. So, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is a comprehensive statement of the human rights, addressing the human rights of Indigenous peoples to live in dignity and to maintain their strength in their own communities. And as General Manager of Community Futures South Fraser, we work very, very closely with our partners at Stolo Community Futures, who work with all of the Stolo Nation Indigenous communities from Langley through to Hope. And our partnership with Stolo Community Futures has been just fantastic. We have done workforce collaboration projects with them to enhance the skills and abilities of the Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. And we have worked to help develop business skills for Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities in social media and marketing and financial planning, as well as, there's so many areas that we cover. So our partnership that we have with Stolo Community Futures that covers the Indigenous communities here in Chilliwack, obviously as well, has been just so beneficial for economic development and encouraging our Indigenous communities to share their information and to sell their products that are valuable to them and share their stories. And I think that's probably one of the key pieces to supporting our Indigenous communities is to be able to share their stories and educate our communities on what they need and what they've learned and what they've experienced so that we can all come together and build a great community in partnership with our friends.
And that's time. Thank you. Chris Clute for 2 minutes.
Thank you for the question. Certainly, we want to be a willing partner, and we have demonstrated our willingness to partner with the different First Nations in our community. A lot of the developing happening within our community, and you see it all around us, is on native land, residential and commercial. We're constrained with our geography, obviously, river, mountains, and agricultural land reserve, which we don't want to see as an option for any housing like subdivision. So I think the willingness on the city's behalf to work together to come to agreements on utilities, water, sewer, allowing them to be self-sustaining and independent and make their own decisions on their traditional lands is super important, and we'll continue to support them in this.
Thank you. And Jared Mumford for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, we need to work with our Indigenous leaders. I think Councillor Mercer mentioned Chief App, and we're all familiar with Chief Jimmy and the work that Squeala and Shackton have been doing from an economic standpoint. But we need to reach out to the other communities as well, and find out how we can support them, again, with utilities, as Councillor Clute mentioned, and in other ways as well. I think it's just as important to tap into some of the young entrepreneurs in some of our communities and some of the communities around us. I think of Aaron Pete, who's quite a popular young man now, who's just, I think, elected to council at Chihuahua, who is an expert, a burgeoning expert in economic development, and he wants to transform that community, and we could probably learn a thing or two from him. But maybe more importantly, we need to go into those communities with a good heart and a good mind, have conversations, break bread, and create friendships, and make sure that we're walking alongside and everybody's going the same pace and working together moving forward.
Thank you very much. Moving to round 7, and the following candidates will answer this question: Mike McClatchy, Amber Price, and Harv Westring. The Chilliwack and District Real Estate Board indicates the cost of a single detached home is now $1 million, double from 5 years ago. Rental prices have increased 29% in 1 year. What will you do to make housing more affordable for our residents? Mike McClatchy is the first to answer for 2 minutes.
That's a great question, Diane. Thank you. Trying to support new families and existing families with affordable housing. With our supply chain right now, none of that's easy. I live in the construction world, and the prices have skyrocketed 30-40%. One day a hot water tank costs $500, and 3 weeks later they're $1,000. It's not directly related to City Council to ensure what the cost of a single-family home or a townhouse is going to be. Our builders, our developers, they're doing their best. They obviously need to make some money. The trades need to make money, but our supply chain, the excuses for the wars, the excuses for COVID, we know it is an impact. Now, Chilliwack still has affordable housing compared to down the valley, headed west. I don't have an exact answer how we can make that more affordable when the costs of materials, lumbers, everything is going up. Our architects that design these buildings, they don't have any staff, so nothing's moving fast. The engineers are telling me the same thing. How are we going to get cost? They're paying double, triple for labor costs to get a plan ready for a housing project. So there's no easy answer for that. We can't just, as City Hall, snap our fingers and say we're going to have affordable housing for middle income, because the supply chain's just not allowing that right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Amber Price.
Thank you, Diane. I think that this is the single biggest issue facing Chilliwack right now. Affordable housing is a crisis. The growth that Chilliwack is experiencing is incredibly exciting in so many ways, but we are leaving vulnerable community members behind. We have seniors, we have people on fixed incomes, we have students, We have people on disability and lower income people who can't keep up with the rent. They are making tough choices. I have heard from seniors who are choosing between paying the rent and buying their medication, and to me, this is unacceptable. Many citizens and families are one paycheck away from becoming homeless. I have one friend who has been displaced from her home with her husband and her 4 children 9 times in the past 10 years as a renter. I believe that we need to close that gap of affordable, stable, and plentiful rental housing in Chilliwack, and we need to do it quickly. There's been a gap in that inventory since the 80s when you know all of those buildings that you see downtown, those 2 stories, they were plentiful. There was lots of rental housing, and that changed. What was being built changed. I also believe that it's really important that we densify neighborhoods that already have the infrastructure that we need in order for citizens to live great lives, where they don't need cars, where they can tap into transit and walk to grocery stores. I also think it's very important with an aging population that we keep up with senior residences that have lower purchase prices. I like that age-controlled, price-controlled aspect that we have. Walkable neighborhoods and increasing secondary small footprint dwellings on existing properties, adding co-op housing, and working with developers to integrate smaller units that sell for less into every development is something that I would be committed to doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Harv Westering for 2 minutes.
There we go. When we speak of price, we are talking about both the price to buy a home and the price to rent, because these two are inherently linked. There are 3 things that factor into affordable housing: supply, demand, and cost. All things equal, the more demand we have, the higher the price. Because we are such a desirable place, people will always migrate here and we will always have increased demand. Cost is a second factor, but labor rates, material costs, and senior government requirements, step code, those sorts of things, and regulations are continually increasing, driving up the cost of new construction. So cost is also always going to rise. The third factor is supply, and here the city has some influence. Again, all things being equal, the more supply, the lower the price. More supply competing for the same number of buyers means the price comes down. Less price means less profit. Less profit means less demand for raw land, and less demand for raw land means less price for raw land. Boring stuff, I know, but eventually everything shuffles down, and we're starting to see that right now. The market did peak in February of this year, and it's now 15% less, and those prices will continue to drop as more supply hits the market. The challenge is to get more supply on a fixed land base like we have. The least expensive land is to bring infrastructure to is a land on the valley floor, but most of that land is in the ALR. So the only way to increase supply with a fixed land base is to densify. Densify urban corridors like Yale Road, Vetter Road, Broadway, and service those corridors with frequent public transit. The one public transit that we have right now is 20 minutes every 20 minutes on the Vetter corridor, and we've implemented bylaws in place where we really densify along those corridors if they're 400 meters away from a frequent bus stop. So the solution to increasing housing affordability is to densify. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving to round 8. And the candidates answering that question are Jeff Shields and Jason Lum. It has been mentioned that with more social services coming to Chilliwack, more people experiencing homelessness will be attracted to our community. What are your ideas for a balance between helping those in need and supporting our business community? Jeff Shields for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. We do a good job in Chilliwack when it comes to social services. We have a very unique situation in that all our social service groups work together, not against one another. A lot of communities, it's about the numbers. It's about getting the numbers so you getting the funding. In Chilliwack, it's very unique because they're looking for the best service for the individual. They think about the person and not just the funding. And then when it comes to supported housing, we find the property, we work with BC Housing, we have quick rezoning, so we try and get those up as quick as possible. Unfortunately, we're still waiting for one on Rowett that I'm sure Mr. Coulter's going to help us speed right along. But then we become a victim of our own success, and as people, there's concerns that busloads of homeless people are being sent to Chilliwack. You talk to any of the social service agencies on the street, and they say, well, no, that's not true. You do see the odd new face, and they are quick to talk to those faces. The best road to recovery, I'm not in the social service side of things, but this is what I've been told. The best road to recovery is to be near family and friends, so it's best to get them back to their home community. How do we balance that with business? Well, we do whatever we can to make businesses safe for employees, customers. It's not necessarily just the homeless people that are creating the issues. There's a lot of people that are housed that are creating the issues. So I think it's very unfair to point it all at the homeless. There's some that are suffering. They all have their own situations. So I think it's more of a multifaceted approach than just the homeless.
Thank you. And Jason Lum.
So I actually agree with a lot of what Jeff just said. I think he offered some really good insight into it. I think that we have to be very careful about looking at the idea that homeless folks that end up in Chilliwack are somehow a result of being sent from another community. I know I've seen other communities use that as an excuse to not want to provide services or to assist to provide services or advocate for more services. And I think, as Jeff said, we watch very carefully, and our social service agencies, as well as the Chilliwack Healthier Community Society and the frontline workers, are working very closely together, outreach, etc., to kind of keep an eye on and keep intelligence on what is happening on the street. That being said, it's extremely frustrating. I remember the first business I started was on downtown on Nowell Street, and I remember having to frequently go out and sweep up broken glass and pick up drug paraphernalia off the street, deal with folks who did not want to move along and wanted to cause problems. And this is a very real challenge for businesses. And when we're trying to attract business, and we're trying to redevelop, and we're trying to create a positive atmosphere downtown, it can be a huge challenge. But I agree with Jeff that we have to be careful not to stigmatize folks who are experiencing homelessness by lumping them into the crowd of being criminals, because they're not all. So I think if we look at the prolific offender strategies that are out there, we look at those the small group that are causing a lot of vandalism and crime, and build customized strategies to deal with them along with the province, is the best.
And that's the time. Thank you. We're going to move to round 9. And the candidates being asked that question are Brent Boker, Chris Clute, and Amber Price. And this is a job interview question. I'll just bring it up. What is your motivation to run for council, and what experience and background do you have that would make you the best choice for voters? Over to Brent for that.
Why run? This was not something on my radar maybe even 4 months ago, but definitely not 6 months ago when I was sitting around, fully employed individual in the tech industry. I decided probably a couple months ago that I wanted to step back from that and spend some more time with my family. And I think just sitting around thinking of where my life was and where I wanted it to go, this was an opportunity that presented itself. So I decided to step forward. I think I provide a unique perspective as a young parent. I think Jason might have me beat by a month or so. Our youngest are about the same age, but offer a unique perspective there, relatively speaking. And I think I can speak for families really well. I'm living it right now. It's not something that, I was putting kids in swimming lessons 20 years ago. I'm doing that right now, so I'm living that life for that part of the population. I think my career in tech is relevant. I know we have lots of industry here, and agriculture is certainly a portion of there. I come from a farming family and continue to have farming family. My garden is not quite the size where I can sell anything, but it certainly feeds us lots. But have that agricultural background and appreciation that I think is important in a place like Chilliwack. We certainly have a large agricultural community in and surrounding the city. And so sort of kind of back to the tech piece, I do think that is an important industry that we can help build. I'd like to be involved with how we build startups and the community there. There's a whole group of people now, knowledge workers, that are working from home, and they might have an office in Vancouver, but they never go there. And how do we connect these people? I know in commercial real estate, which is where I've spent a lot of my time, they talk about people going to the office for meaningful collisions, and I think I'd like to figure out how we can create meaningful collisions out there in the community for people that maybe don't have an office to go into anymore, to share with people around the water cooler and the coffee machine. And I know that's certainly something I've experienced as well, and hopefully that's something I can bring to the table.
Thank you. Over to Chris Clute for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Oh. Good. Thanks. Thank you for the question. What is my motivation to run for council? It's quite simple. Leave the place better than it was when I started. And I started in 2014, and I have had the privilege to sit around this table for the past 8 years. And I think of some of the incredible changes, positive changes we've had in our community. And just think of the downtown, how tired it was, where the District 1881 project is undergoing significant revitalization. Parking's now a challenge in that area. It's humming, it's thriving. We can't keep the 50-kilometer speed limit through that area because there's people everywhere. So we're going to have to have a look at the Five Corners area to reduce our speed limits. Attracting business to our community so that we have proper taxation balance through residential, commercial, and industrial. I think of the businesses from adjoining communities who've chose Chilliwack to set roots in, Ritchie Brothers Auctions, Prairie Coast Equipment, Pacific Dairy, and Molson's. Just a few of the bigger players and plenty of little businesses as well. And when I think of somebody like Molson's who pay $1 million in taxation a year, that's $1 million of revenue that we don't have to drum up through residential taxation in order to keep your taxes low. You know, we all have the same desires and wants. We want a thriving, safe city, and I believe that me playing a part in this council has moved Chilliwack forward in an incredibly fantastic way, and I only take a small portion of that credit. It's teamwork. It's all about teamwork. The mayor mentioned it earlier. We don't need to agree on everything, but as long as we can respect one another. That's how democracy works, and I really believe that leaving the city better than it was when I started in 2014 is the goal, and I'm confident we're moving in that direction.
Thank you. Over to Amber Price.
See if I can remember to turn it off this time. Thank you very much for this question. I believe that we are stronger together, and I am very passionate about ensuring that all voices are heard and represented at City Council. I am running mostly to make a place at the table for the voices that are less heard in our community. I believe in leading with heart, leading with hard work, and leading with purpose. And I believe that opinions are best expressed in action. Over the past 24 years, I have served on numerous boards, task groups, and committees throughout our community, gaining valuable governance experience, making great relationships with all kinds of incredible community leaders, and developing the skills that would be necessary to be a great counselor for you. I've served with the Chilliwack Learning Society, the Downtown Chilliwack BIA, and was appointed to the Tourism Chilliwack Board. I also currently serve on the Chilliwack Economic Partners Corporation, known as SEPCO, and I serve on the Creative Commission with them as well. I serve as a founding member and board member of Ina's Community Cats with Ina Vermeris. I serve on the Chilliwack Community Arts Council, and I also sit as a member of the Chilliwack Distribution Committee. As a small business owner, I have learned so much about fiscal responsibility, building a team, and creating a community like a microcosm of what I want to see for Chilliwack. If you have visited my business, you have seen my heart, and I will bring that to the table for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Going to enter round 10, and Harv Westring, Nicole Hudema-Reid, and Bud Mercer will answer this question in 2 minutes. The number of doctors in Chilliwack does not meet the need of the population. How would you suggest the city brings in more doctors, and specifically more general practitioners and family doctors? Over to Harv Westring for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, that's, I think, the next challenge over this next term. It was a challenge at the beginning of 2018 and still a challenge. How do we attract doctors when places like Clearwater and Port Hardy and multiple small communities all over the province are also doing the same thing? I think the main thing we can do is promote Chilliwack as a great place to live and also a great place to raise a young family. New doctors coming in are presumably young, hopefully starting a family. If we can promote Chilliwack as a great place to raise a young family, then hopefully we can get them here. Also, just educate with the quality of life issues. We've got great schools here, we've got mountains. You can go kayaking in the afternoon and still hit a Canucks game in the evening. So I think that's kind of the focus that we should do. Also making a point that Chilliwack is the most affordable community in the Fraser Valley. Lots of good, authentic restaurants here. I mean, I think we just have to appeal to their desire to be part of the community and to live here. The obvious answer would be to advocate the province to provide more money to pay practitioners to get into the industry, but that's not our role. Thanks.
Thank you. Nicole Hudema-Reid for 2 minutes.
Thanks, Diane. So SEPCO has been working on this project for the last number of years. As Harv mentioned, in 2018 it was a problem as well. And they created lots of opportunities for doctors to come out and tour our local community and see the great things that we do here with our nature and our parks, and really trying to address the needs of what doctors see as important to them. So we've done a good job in promoting that and trying to get that information out. During COVID, obviously there was a lot of healthcare workers that really struggled and left the workforce, so it's difficult to bring our levels back to where they were prior to COVID. And I think that by creating a really good community feel and showing the doctors when they do come that we are a community, we're not a bedroom community of the city, that we are a community that supports each other, hears each other, works together, and builds a team around them. We also need to provide our doctors and their teams with mental health supports and excellent mental health supports so that they can address what they see on a daily basis and struggle with on a regular basis. So those are some of the things. We also are a UBC training ground for in our hospital and in a number of our doctors' offices. So let's keep that going, and let's keep those residents here and wanting to continue to be here for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Bud Mercer.
Thank you. I reflect back, maybe just before COVID when our son visited us. Our son's an emergency doctor in Ottawa. And what I remember most about that visit, other than our son visiting us, was that he was absolutely obsessed with our Cultus Lake and paddleboarding, our hiking trails, and the more arduous mountain walks a little bit farther out into the Chilliwack Valley. In a discussion with him, he said, you must be over the top with doctors here because of what you have to offer as a city here in Chilliwack. And it struck me that, we don't celebrate enough what we have here, and I think that's the key to our success with attracting medical practitioners. We have to decide, what it is and what our audiences are. A few years ago, I spoke at the Canadian Medical Board in Toronto, and after I finished speaking, somebody stood up from Winnipeg and talked about Winnipeg and what Winnipeg had to offer. And I sat there going, but it struck me that these are the kind of opportunities that we should be pursuing. I think SEPCO's a great partner. I think our tourism board is a wonderful partner. You look at the videos that are done on television about Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia. I think there's an opportunity to advance those kind of discussions and initiatives and look for the audiences, whether it's medical schools, whether it's the medical meetings, whether it's the hospitals. But I think if we do that, we'll be on the right track to attracting more medical practitioners. And it's not just doctors, right? It's the nurses, it's the doctors' aides. There's so much that we need here in this community right now. We're almost at a crisis now. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move to round 11, and then there will be round 12 will be the general round for all individuals to answer questions they didn't have a chance to answer. The people answering these questions will be Mike McClatchy, Jared Mumford, and Jeff Shields. Chilliwack faced one of its most challenging times during the flood event of 2021. What will you do to provide adequate flood protection and flood mitigation for Chilliwack? Mike McClatchy for 2 minutes.
Thanks, Diane. I was actually hoping I was going to get this question. It falls right into my infrastructure. When it comes to infrastructure, the save and spend, sitting on the outside now and not on the inside of City Hall, I'm not sure of the numbers where we are spending on our dike system, on our infrastructure as far as the flooding, the pumps, the Barrowtown pumps. We have our own pump system for our septic system here in Chilliwack. I know they've been upgraded, but on the flooding side, if we are just remotely not servicing our diking systems or any other infrastructure because we have to save money before we're going to spend money, I don't think that's adequate. What would I do directly? It's all part of a teamwork. I can't say one person can come in and change what we already have going, but working with the team to make sure that I live on Fairfield. So Fairfield Island, I get the first questions from all my friends. Have you flooded yet? No. And I don't want to flood. So it's a big thing for me to move forward, if elected in City Hall, to make sure that all of our systems, and that diking system and our rivers, it's a big priority for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared Mumford.
Thank you, Diane. Well, I think we've known for decades that we're at risk for flooding, and then it finally happened. So, I'll take this moment to thank Councillor Lum for the work that he did on the ground during those floods. We were sandbagging in Townsend Park here, and he was working with the FPRD and down at Masonite. We were sending boats up to Hope to get people back here, and then busing them out west towards the city where they came from. And I think it really showed the ramifications of us sitting on our hands. We need to pay attention to that infrastructure. I couldn't agree more with Mike. We need to work with all levels of government, provincial government, and especially the First Nations, where there might be gaps in that protection, and also to protect those communities as well. I think we're all well aware now that sometimes when you wait to build infrastructure, it's a gamble, and that we gambled in the wrong way, and now we all know that should be a priority. I'm not sure why that isn't talked about right now at the table, but if I'm at the table, it will be a discussion that I'd be gainfully glad to have.
Thank you. Jeff Shields.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, we certainly 2021 was it was crazy. They would have called that a 1 in 100 year flood. I think it's now down to a 1 in 50 year flood, or perhaps even a 1 in 20 year flood event. So we are in a different we're in a different zone than we were 10 years, 20 years ago. Diking flood protection has to be a combination of the city, of provincial, and of federal funding. We can't do it alone. Right now, the province and the feds, we need them to work with us. One of the issues we have a dike that needs to be upgraded. We're waiting for it to be seismically sound. Well, I think the important thing is to get that dike up. Let's just get it up to the standard that it needs to be, and let's worry about it being seismic down the road. We just need that dike to be there in case we have this same thing happen this fall. Same with all the sand and silt that ran down the Vedder River. Now we need to dredge that out to be able to keep those levels low. We did manage to get the province on side, and we got that done before the water start coming down this year. What can we do from the city standpoint besides, we do regular dike inspections every year. We've seen that some of the mountainsides that the culverts were undersized, so now we need to start enlarging those culverts so that runoff can get through there. Riprap is something that a term that everybody knows now, but we need to reinforce our river banks. The Vedder River particularly is one that's a huge issue. We need to teach the public about emergency preparedness. It's important. We can't ignore it. Everybody has to be prepared for something.
Thank you very much. So we have the opportunity now. I hope everybody did take the opportunity to record any questions they were interested in answering. So for 2 minutes, I'm going to have every candidate indicate an answer to a question if they wish that they weren't able to answer before. I'm going to start with the middle of the pack and move my way out. So we're going to start with Bud Mercer.
Well, thank you, Diane. I'd like to address the question on homelessness and public safety. When we use the word public safety, our minds automatically go to policing. And nothing could be further from the truth. Policing is just one small piece of the public safety pie. It involves multiple agencies across multiple governments. It includes probation, it includes corrections, it includes our court systems, our prosecutors, our prolific offender strategies, our Solicitor General's office, release programs from prisons, because we have prisons surrounding our area. It involves all of those sectors coming together and working in unison, and they're not, and that's one of the challenges we have here in Chilliwack. But the biggest piece that's missing is the partnerships with Fraser Health around mental health treatment and drug addiction treatment. I can't tell you how many times I've communicated with first responders who come together with somebody in the middle of the night and they say, I've had it, I've had enough, I need help. And there's nowhere to go. There's not enough treatment. And until we get all of the pieces of the public safety pie, working together in unison, for us as the citizens of Chilliwack, it's going to be like having our proverbial finger in the dike. We're just going to keep throwing money at it. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to be efficient. We need Fraser Health on board. We need the treatment. I have spent the last 4 years, along with Councillor Lim and others, berating, bullying, doing everything we can with Fraser Health to get them to realize the situation on the street. We've made modest progress, but it's what we have to continue with the next 4 years, or it's going to continue, and we're going to continue throwing money against something that might not work without that partnership being in place. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move now to Mike McClatchy for 2 minutes. No, the closing comes next for a minute. So this is your ability to answer any question that you weren't called on to answer before.
I just wanted to touch on the development process at City Hall. Gearing up for this run, I've had a lot of people come to me and say, you know, how do we actually get our permits faster? How do we deal with this at City Hall? There never seems to be anyone there. Well, I talked to City Hall, I talked to some of the frontliners, and it's a combination of developers not filling out their paperwork correctly, expecting the city to go ahead and fix that for them, which is not the case. That's not their job. So how do we make it better? I know that inside City Hall, it's an amazing team, right from council, the finance, the building, the engineers. I've had conversations with them all. Everyone's struggling with the labor shortage and basically experienced labor. We don't have time all the time to train someone from the bottom up. So looking after the top positions in City Hall, maybe we need more. Our development time for building permits is pretty good, but I think it can be a little better. So moving forward, a little bit more TLC down at City Hall could go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Jason Lum.
I'd like to talk about transportation, connecting transit corridors and connecting with First Nation communities. And there was also a question about more equitable transit as well, so I'll see if I can tackle all those. So yes, in short, I do support better connections through to the different First Nation communities. We already have some connections there, but I believe we can do better. Transit is one of the few services where we have an amazing cost share with the province of British Columbia. They cover through BC Transit about 50% of the cost, so we get a great amount of value. The only issue is we're also challenged when the province decides to freeze the transportation budget, which has been frozen right now this past year. So we haven't been able to realize all of the investments that we would like to on our transit system. First Nation communities have access to some different grant opportunities, federal grants and provincial grants that the city doesn't. So partnering closely with First Nation communities to provide better access will be key. Making a better, more equitable transit future planning exercise that brings more First Nation communities to the table when we're talking about building routes that are going to work for them is going to be key, and I support doing that. But also looking at realizing that not everybody rides general transit. They also require customized transit, so making investments in the handy-dart system and custom transit here, which also requires work with the province. We've asked the province to help us increase some of that budget, and I believe they're listening. And then the other transportation corridors, so looking at walking trails, hiking trails, not just roads, but looking at what we can do to build more cycling infrastructure and multimodal infrastructure, realizing not everybody can get on a bike. And so it's really looking at the suite of opportunities, but you don't do that unless you're sitting at the same table together from the beginning.
Thank you. Over to Chris Clute.
Thank you, Diane. I'm going to tackle the transportation question as well, if that's all right. I can't compete with the guy next to me, but I'll try provide some thoughts on my own. I'll talk a little bit about the regional model first. We have a highway system that's woefully inadequate for our region. We all know that sitting in traffic is extremely frustrating. I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago speak with you, our MLA Dan, and a few other MLAs about maybe some quick wins if the budget won't allow the addition of a third lane. And I suggested, first off, transport trucks only in the slow lane and less passing, and much like the European model, triple the on-ramps and have the speed on the on-ramps 10 kilometers faster than the highway speed, so it actually works like a zipper. There's a quick win right there. We all know we need a third lane. Another thing I want to touch on, in the budget of the provincial government in 2020, they spoke about light rail to the Fraser Valley. Great thought, never heard anything since, so we need to hold their feet to the fire. Locally, we've had a fantastic team at City Hall looking at every opportunity to provide pedestrian and cycling corridors throughout the city. I biked 30 kilometers earlier today. I know very well what works and what might not work, but it comes to competing interests within our city and one person's passion here and another person's passion there. So it's all about livability, and if we think about our moderate climate in this city, we have lots of opportunity. There's, in the comprehensive municipal plan that was referenced earlier, there's a pedestrian bridge to go over the Vetter River waiting for provincial approvals. There's a pedestrian bridge at the end of Williams to Fairfield Island, again waiting provincial approvals. There's a boardwalk from Menzies Street to Hope River. We want to make sure there's ample opportunity for everybody to get out there and get out of their cars and enjoy the moderate climate and have alternate ways to get to places and visit family or do shopping. And I think we have lots of opportunity in our city to explore further options. The rail, I'm done.
Thank you. Brent Boker.
I'll make one quick. I want to circle back to affordable housing, and I think I largely agree with what my fellow candidates spoke to earlier. I think the key here is more inventory. I think specifically we need to be looking to have more purpose-built rentals put into the market, and whatever we can do within our control as council, whether that be preferential zoning for purpose-built rentals so they're not having to compete as directly with, say, a condominium, a strata building, will have very different economics. I think anything we can do to improve the ROI, the return on investment for these folks that are building these types of buildings would be a win. And I think if we let the private sector take over there, I think they're very capable to do that. And certainly across Canada, there are a lot more purpose-built rentals being built. Part of the work that I come from, we spent a lot of time working with multifamily developers and owners. And I think certainly seeing more of that happen here in Chilliwack would help get more beds, more doors, more people in these types of accommodations. They are generally very good. They're not basements that are somewhat unregulated in the city. They are safe. I think it's important to get people into good, safe housing and generally just increase the building stock there.
Thank you. Let's work our way from the other end. So Harv Westring for 2 minutes on a question you'd like to answer.
Thanks, Dan. I think I'll tackle the homelessness and drug addiction issue. So a very complicated issue, obviously, with no easy answer. But having no policy is a policy. So our policy over the last term has been to work with BC Housing to get more housing. Housing first is a concept that works. People who don't have a place to hang their hat can't think about the basic needs, and it's a downward spiral from there. So I think that's really the main goal that we want to tackle. We have been working with BC Housing. We have over 200 units of units that have received their occupancy permit and people living in them, and we have another 87, I think, that are slated for this year. And with the Paramount project, we also have CMHC, who's involved in the bottom floor, I think, with the commercial section, and BC Housing with the top 4 or I think 5 floors. So I think that's the goal. That's what we need to do. We've got to give these people an opportunity, a leg up, and from there we can get them off the street and onto a better life. Thanks.
Thank you. Over to Jeff Shields for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. I'd like to tackle the Indigenous economic reconciliation question that was brought up. So this is particularly important in Chilliwack. As you know, we have 2 tribes in Chilliwack, Palaut and Chilkoyak, and we have a number of different bands in Chilliwack. So I don't know any other community in BC that has that much intertwined in their community.
We know that there's bands out there that have been very successful with their economic development. The Osoyoos Band, the West Bank Band are two that come immediately to mind. And I think there's an opportunity for us to work with the bands here in Chilliwack and see them as successful as those ones. I think there's two sources. There's the traditional source that they have where it's their fishing and hunting, and then it's their arts that was brought up, and their culture, which is very important, not only from an economic standpoint, but from a pure culture standpoint. But now there's also the new sources, and we've seen what Jackton has done. We've seen what Squale has done. And in the past, it used to be just housing developments that happened on the local reserves, and now we're seeing more true economic. We're seeing jobs put into place, and jobs put into place not only help the band members, but they help the non-Indigenous members of Chilliwack. So I think it's important that we work together with them to help them out. It helps us out. We're really just one community. I think over the last few years, it's no longer us and them. It's one community of Chilliwack, and we all need to work together.
Thank you. Nicole Heidema-Reid for 2 minutes.
I'll take motivation to run for council for 500, please, Diane. So leadership and collaboration are definitely two of my strongest skill factors for why I'm running for council. I have many years of experience leading teams of people and seeking feedback to make informed decisions that focus on the outcome. I look beyond the scope of my role, and I attribute a deep understanding of how my activities feed into the enriched performance of a team. I'm all about listening and getting to the roots of issues to develop a fuller understanding. I am an excellent communicator, prioritizing clarity, honesty, and integrity. My skill in listening for the views of others makes me a strong leader in building strong communities through collaboration and engagement. I am a team player that focuses on bringing people together. And that's why you should vote for me.
Thank you. Amber Price.
Thank you, Diane. I'd like to tackle the crime question, but I want to come at it from a slightly different angle. For those of you that don't know, I am very passionate about literacy, and the keys to success in life are directly linked to literacy. What many people don't know is that without gross motor coordination skills, children are not school ready by the time they hit kindergarten, and they begin to fall behind. There are so many studies that show the direct link between failing in school, not graduating, and engaging in criminal activity. I really want to look at the budget that we put into our parks as part of crime prevention in our community. Investing in our youth and putting in infrastructure like our pump track keep our kids out of trouble, using their bodies, their minds, and socializing with people off of Facebook and Instagram. I think these are integral to keeping our community crime-free, not just now, but in the future. I also think that it's really important that we use our crime map. Our crime map is there to inform our police officers and our city where concentration of crime is happening. And I hear my friend Bud talking about, prolific offenders and making sure that we're concentrating our resources on removing those prolific offenders from the streets so that they can stop doing what they're doing. I believe that police responding to calls need to be there with proper support staff, that we need health and mental health concerns to be addressed by the proper professionals to ensure that our responses are compassionate and to reduce the systemic bias that happens when police attend calls at times. I don't think that the answer is always just more police. I think that it's systemic and that we need to look at how our youth are growing up, what we offer our youth, and ensure that they're set for success.
Thank you. And Jared Mumford.
Thanks, Diane. I'll take the job interview question. And I'm going to speak a little bit fast, and I think you'll see why. I love this town. I was raised to give back to this town. Hi, Mom. She's in the crowd there. I want to see this town thrive. I want to see this town be healthy and diverse and a place that I can be proud of. As for experience, I am your chair of your Board of Education right now, which I assure you is not the easiest governance role I've ever had. But I've tried to lead that board with a steady hand and to be fair and compassionate when making my decisions there. As part of that role, I'm also the chair of the Budget Committee, which is responsible for about $750 million over that term. So I do understand fiscal responsibility. And in addition to that, I'm the co-chair of Chilliwack Healthier Communities, which tackles some of the most serious social issues that we've been talking about tonight, including poverty reduction, housing affordability, low barrier housing, overdose crisis, youth mental health, healthy seniors, you name it. In addition to being co-chair there, I'm also part of the Operational Strategy Working Group, which actually identifies the key priorities and then sets them into the strategic plan so that we can work on them for the next 3 to 5 subsequent years. In addition to that, I am the Vice President of the Downtown Community Market, which recently put about $30,000 of fresh food into the hands of people who need it most down in the downtown core. I'm involved with the Park Society, maintaining our trails around town, and I'm part of the Little Mountain Preservation Project, which is an effort to try and get a little Stanley Park close to our urban core so that people who have barriers and can't get to Luquam Community Forest Rotary Trail can have their own urban park. I'm also Vice President of Chilliwack Restorative Justice, and I'm on the Food Council and was part of the conceptual adoption of the Chilliwack Community Food Hub. I was also the keynote speaker for Chilliwack Community Services this year. I want to continue to serve this town. I want this to be a place where my children can raise their families, and I'm trying to earn your vote on...
That's the time. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. We're going to be moving to the final elevator speeches for that last for a minute, but I did want to really thank all of you for inputting the questions. We know we didn't get to every question, so I would recommend that you get a hold of any of the candidates regarding your questions to ask them, and I'm sure they will be more than willing to do that. So here we are at the end, and I'm going to start with Harv Westring and just move my way over for the last minute to answer the question, why should Chilliwack vote for you?
Thanks, Diane. I am proud of what we have accomplished over the last 4 years, despite COVID, a heat dome, atmospheric rivers, and wildfires. We have expanded our active transportation network, approved and began to implement our climate action plan, focused on public safety by adding 19 new RCMP members and 8 support positions, added 7 firefighters and 1 fire inspector, received occupancy over 200 supportive housing units. District 1881 is leading the charge of revitalizing our downtown. Molson's is brewing awesome drinks, and both malls are getting revitalized. This has all been done while keeping our taxes the lowest in the Lower Mainland. Businesses are attracted here because our multiplier rate for businesses is 2.2, which is also the lowest in the Lower Mainland. Let's keep Chilliwack moving forward. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. Jeff Shields.
In 2018, I likened this process to a job interview. Now it's review time, and it's up to you, the voters, to decide if I get to keep this job or move on. Whichever way it goes, these past 4 years have been memorable, and I'm so proud of being able to serve my community on Council. Each candidate here tonight comes to the table with their own unique combination of knowledge, experience, and commitment, much as I do. But I know in order to do this job effectively, you must also be a team player, open to compromise, have the strength to stick to your convictions, have empathy, and never, ever waver from the principles that got you elected in the first place. As voters, you need to decide who you think will be the best people to sit in council chambers. They don't have to be the smartest, or most charismatic or articulate. But they do need to be the people that will always make the most informed, educated, and unbiased decisions, and they must put the city's interests first and foremost. Like with any successful business, it's about putting the right people in the right seats. If that's what you want, then you should vote for me on October 15th.
Wow. Thank you. Nicole Heidemann-Reed.
I'd like to start out by saying thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Chilliwack BIA for hosting this event today, and Diane for moderating. Thank you to all of you for allowing me to share my insights into the questions that were brought up here today. I'm a strong community leader that listens to the needs of our residents and helps to find solutions that are fair and equitable for all. You can contact me through my website at nicoleheidemareed.ca, and I can spell that for you because you'll need it, or follow me on any of my socials at Heidemareed. Please tell everyone you know to get out and vote. No matter who they're voting for, take this time to encourage everybody around you to just get out and vote. And while they're at it, they can vote for me. Vote Heidemareed, October 15th.
Amber Price.
This has been such a fun evening. People who know me well know that I was intimidated by this, but I have to say it's been a lot of fun, and I'm a bit sad that it's over. I'm really grateful that you all came out tonight for this important discussion. And the thing that I ask of you is let's not let this discussion stop here. We need to be having these difficult conversations 365 days a year. And I hope that if you have questions for me, observations, things that you would like to share that frustrate you or enliven you about our community, that you'll reach out to me at amberprice.ca. I promise to bring my heart and both of my ears to City Hall. I am excited at the prospect of bringing diversity and increased perspectives to the table. You are all engaged citizens, and like my friend Nicole, I would like to invite you to make a social night out of voting, bring friends out, get dinner, and have fun while getting out and participating in democracy. Please vote for me on October the 15th.
Jared Mumford.
Thank you, Diane. I want to thank all the candidates for putting their hats in the ring. For all of you, I have great respect. I just want to take a moment also to thank Mayor, incumbents, and outgoing councillors Sue Knott for the incredible work that they've done over the past 4 years for us. And thank you all for coming tonight. Again, to echo Amber's words, you're engaging and participating in democracy, and that's a good thing for us, and that's a good thing for you, and that's a good thing for the community. I just want to remind you, remember when you're going to vote, don't ask candidates what they're going to do in exchange for your vote, but ask them what they're already doing to earn it. That's how my family's voting this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Bud Mercer.
Thank you. In 2018, you trusted me with your vote to serve as councillor for the city of Chilliwack. At that time, I promised you that I would focus on public safety, children, parks and rec, trail systems, everything to do with the outdoor. A year into my tenure, I was also given and embraced co-chair of our Diversity, Accessibility and Inclusivity Committee. Much has happened. There's been so much success over those portfolios. You heard a little bit about it tonight, but there's not enough time to talk about it completely. That was my scorecard. I made a commitment to you. I delivered. There's still work to be done. I would ask that you keep your confidence in me and vote for me in the middle of October. There's more work to be done, and I look forward to doing it. Thank you.
Mike McClatchy.
I forgot to thank my team in my opening statement, my family and my wife, for supporting me here in this endeavor. What I can tell you from my point is I am a CEO, a vice president, a coach, team member for now and in the future and in the past. What I have to offer at City Hall is a team player. I've coached winning teams and I've been on winning teams. And I already know that City Hall has a winning team. And for me to join that team would only make it better. So come October 15th, when you're out there, vote for Mike McClatchy. Thank you.
Jason Lum.
So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you to all the candidates. Thank you, Diane, and to the BIA and to the Chamber for hosting this event. I don't envy the great responsibility, the choice. There's some fantastic options up here. My name is Jason Lum. I've served you for the past 3 years. This has been one of the most challenging and rewarding jobs I've ever done. I'd love to come back and play a role. I have more to give. I believe I've got a skill set that remains valuable at the council table. This job is like no other. It's diverse. Every day I wake up with a new challenge in front of me, but one of the things that you will know from me is that I do not back down from those challenges, and I will continue to support you, continue to remain an open and accessible member of your council should you return me back on October 15th. Thank you very much.
Chris Clute.
Thank you, and my thanks goes out to everybody listening along, everybody in the audience, to the BIA and the Chamber for putting on this event, listening to all the fantastic candidates who stepped forward. My respect and thanks goes out to them as well. I hope you have a better understanding of who I am. I'm hopeful for your support on October 15th. Before you leave, I have a table out there with a flyer. I have 8 stops to a better Chilliwack. Follow along on social media. We're working on all of these stops, and we really have a great team at City Hall. I'm hopeful you see me as somebody willing to vote back in to work on your behalf. My passion, my experience, my commitment to this role, I think, continue to be an asset to the city, and I'm hopeful that you'll take the time to research all the candidates, and the voter is never wrong. You'll make the best choice, and whatever outcome that may be, we all want to make sure that Chilliwack continues to move forward in a positive, thriving direction, and I thank you for your attendance this evening.
And Brent Boker.
Thanks again for having us. I know I'm the last one standing between you guys and your beds tonight. It's been a good evening together. Just reiterate, I want to keep families first, keep taxes low, invest in active transportation. I also promise to be a transparent councillor, making sure we're involving the public in the decisions that we're making. And I hope you will see me as a good candidate to bring my unique perspective to the table. You can find me online. My website's votebowker.ca. Hopefully that's easy to remember. You can also give me a call, email. I'm approachable. You can talk to me after, stop me on the street, stop me and Save on Foods. You can also find me on the streets. I've biked 285 kilometers of the city streets so far in my campaign, and I plan on doing at least that much again here. I don't know if I'm going to get to them all, but my goal is to bike as much as possible, so flag me down, and hopefully we'll see everybody around the city. Thanks. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. So just a few closing remarks. Let's first and foremost thank all these candidates for putting their names forward. Our democracy is something for us to cherish, so let's thank these folks for their work. Also, an event like this doesn't just happen by itself, and we have some people hiding in the back who I'm going to ask to come out, as well as these 2 fine women over here from the Chamber of Commerce and the BIA, and I think we've got Sean Reed and maybe somebody else back there, if you want to come out and just be thanked for all your hard work in getting this going. There we go. I'm going to turn this over to Trevor. I'm wondering, the individual who deals with the IT, whether you could put up the locations, the voting locations for October 15th. There are also 2 advance polls. You can do a mail-in ballot. And I think the last time we had about 30% people voting in the local election, which is pretty common in BC, but I think we can do better than that. So I'll turn it over now to Trevor.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I just wanted to say a few thank yous before you. Thank you for being such a great audience. It's a long journey to take, but thank you for taking it with us. To those of you streaming online, thank you very much for taking the time to stream. Thank you to Robbie Snooks for the Win Media, to the great, incredible volunteers and staff here at the Chilliwack Cultural Centre, and to this wonderful person right here, Diane Jansen, who did an amazing job of moderating this event. To the Chamber of Commerce, the amazing Chamber of Commerce, the team right here, Heather and Taylor, have been working incredibly hard behind the scenes. To Sean and Marlon, working behind the scenes, making sure the computers are running well in the back. And most of all, to this fine selection of folks right here who all have day jobs, families, commitments, life, and they took this time to put themselves forward very courageously to run for office. Those of you who are serving right now, thank you for your service. Those of you who hope to serve, I wish you luck. And thank you so much for being a part of this. And thank you all very much. Leanne, anything else you want to say?
I think the only person left to thank is you. So thank you for being a great partner. But have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
you.